think we're like 1 minute away. Oh, no, right there.
No, we're at 7. Okay, welcome everyone to tonight's planning board meeting. It's March 10th. It's now 7 PM. We're going to take roll call. David Kriegel.
Here.
David Austin is absent this evening. Marcus Kasich.
Here.
Julia Weisenberg's here. Sarah Lewis, our newest member.
Here.
Sean Davey.
Here.
Greg Cranford. I just also want to take just a minute or two to introduce everyone formally to Sarah. So Sarah is our newest planning board member. She took the place of Matt Fox, who left earlier in the year. And Sarah comes to us with a background in earth and environmental science. I believe her graduate work was in energy and environmental management. She is a principal planner for the town of East Hampton. And Sarah's a graduate of Shelton High School, lives here now. And you did a very special internship in Mashamik, in which you worked on wildlife monitoring and habitat management plans. So Sarah has a great understanding of the ecological tapestry of Shelter Island, and we were very excited to interview her and happy that you're now part of our planning board.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sarah. All right, first order of business, we're going to review and approve the minutes from our meeting on February 10th. Did everyone get a chance to look at those minutes?
I guess I did.
Okay, Marcus, okay?
Yeah.
So I'll just need someone to ask for a motion to approve the minutes from February.
Approved.
Thank you, Sean, and a second. David Kriegel, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
I'll abstain since I wasn't there.
right, that's fine. All right, we also have an invoice from Wayland Feeler, which is for the bills for February, which are in the amount of $2,754. Did everyone get a chance to look at those? They seem fine to me. Anyone else? All right, so I just need someone to make a motion to approve the invoice for our attorney at $2,754.
Motion to approve.
Motion to David Kriegel. A second? Second, Greg Cranford. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We do not have an invoice from the Rayner Group. We didn't have any services provided in that last month, and Rick was, actually Rick is excused this evening because there were no applications necessarily pertaining to his expertise. Okay, so we have the Rick Radigan and Barbara Radigan extension. So the applicants via Matt Sherman asked for an extension for this. We are very close to completing this, and I believe, Rick, you did get a chance to look at it, but because it was due yesterday, they did ask for an extension. So we just can't finalize it all tonight, and hence that's why we're going to be giving this. It's within our authority to excuse them and grant them this would be another 90-day extension on the lot line adjustment. So you also a copy of, yeah.
So just something about the map, because I'm not objecting to the board saying this included, but
Yeah.
apparently they ran into a reviewer at the health department, because I saw these back and forth, that told Matt to, the original lot line adjustment map.
Matt Sherman, you mean?
Yeah, Matt Sherman, right. So the lot line adjustment map that you originally reviewed and approved showed the existing lot line and the proposed new lot line, which is what you should do on a lot line adjustment map. So the health department reviewer said, oh, we want you to take off, just show the map, just show the line that's proposed. Well, for our purposes, that doesn't do any good. Now we have a map that shows, because when it came back, I looked at the map, well, what
was there before,
what
right?
was there before? What are we doing? So in case this comes up again, it may have been just that he ran into a reviewer who was, this notion that that's what they should do. First of all, in principle, if you have a lot line modification or lot line adjustment, you should show the before and after, so the board knows what it is and what it's proposed to do. What you have been doing, and this is okay, a lot line adjustment map does not have to be recorded with the county. There's kind of a hierarchy. If you do a major subdivision, more than 4 lots, state law, the New York Real Property Law requires you to file a realty map, okay? So if you have more than 4 lots, like for example, Fowler Trust is a 5-lot subdivision, and it's a subdivision, not a lot line adjustment, that map will be filed with the county clerk. And there are certain formalities associated with that. They have to provide an abstract of title showing that the map filer is the owner of the property. They have to show they paid all the property taxes on the property. No liens, all of those things. And of course, they have to get health department approval stamped on the map, and then planning board chair signs it. 4 lots or less in a subdivision, you're not required by law, by state law, to file a map. Some municipalities do it. East Hampton, for example, will require the filing of any subdivision map, even if it's only 2 lots. But lot line adjustments and modifications aren't creating new lots, they're just
Right.
moving things around.
Yep. Moving things around.
And so what you have been doing, you don't even have to do this, you've been having them file as a miscellaneous map. That's not a regular filed subdivision. Miscellaneous map, if I want to file a survey of my property because I want it on record somewhere, I can go to the county clerk and say, I'd like to file this map as a miscellaneous map. It's a nominal fee, I think the fee is like $25. And they don't check to see yeah, you want to file it, fine. And that's kind of what we're doing. But if the health department were to insist that you only show the proposed new lot line on the map and not what it was before, then it becomes almost pointless to even file the miscellaneous map. So we'll see if this comes up again. I know that other maps, lot line adjustments, where you have people file the map, the health department has not previously, as far as I'm aware, raised this issue. But if you're gonna file a map for a lot line adjustment, you really want to show what it was and what it is. So I just bring it up in case it arises again.
When did the health department start requiring filing lot lines?
They don't. They have to approve the lot line adjustment because you're changing lot boundary. And the health department takes the position that any kind of a change in lot line, because you might change the boundary and put your septic system on the other lot, right?
Right.
So if you do a lot line adjustment, you need health department approval. But the filing of the map in any form is something that's up to you. The health department does not require the map be filed with the county clerk.
But when did they start reviewing these maps?
Lot line adjustments, they've been doing it for decades. When I was with the town of East Hampton, they were.
Because I did one 30 years ago and they didn't ask me to file it.
They've been doing it since at least the 1990s, because I dealt with it, when I was the town planning board in East Hampton.
All right, thank you for the explanation. I do appreciate that. We'll have to think about that. I mean, again, it could
We'll
just.
see what happens the next time we deal with
Yeah.
this.
But in regards to the resolution for Rick and Barbara Radigan, all right, so this would give them another 90 days. And it would be until June 9th, 2026, although I don't foresee us or them needing that much time, hopefully. I just need a motion to approve this resolution number 2 of 2026 for the RMB line adjustment, and it will give them until June 9th, 2026.
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Sean. And a second?
Second.
David Kriegel, all in favor then on this one?
Aye.
Motion is carried. Okay, good. And that was the only one we had on the, in our business meeting agenda. So I'll make a motion that we close the business meeting. Can I get a second on that?
Second.
Second, thank you, Sean. All in favor?
Aye.
7:08. All right, we're going to move into our work session. Obviously, we just approved our resolution for RMB lot line adjustment. We do have about 5 subdivision applications, which you're familiar with. We just granted the Bloom extension. That was in our last meeting in February. West Neck Creek Cottages, we're still waiting on a final application. They have until April. I'm sure they'll be in touch if they are not going to be ready for that. Fallert, we are still waiting on them. It's my understanding that we just had some correspondence, Jessica, right, about Fowler, and that they might be considering an extension, but it's quite early yet, so I guess they can reach out as the time draws near. Crescent Beach LLC, again, they're ready for their final application, and they have as well till June 9th. And then the Road Minor subdivision, we're just still waiting on it if they want to revise their sketch plan on that. And White Performance Bond is still at town board level.
Can you email me because it's on the agenda.
On White?
Yeah, the performance bond. Maybe I'll talk to Thomas or something. Thomas.
But we said a couple meetings prior that we've mentioned this, and I think either the town board liaisons or Thomas's was going to get back to you guys.
I'll I'm trying to remember.
I'd love to get it off.
Yeah, it's coming up, I don't know anything about
It's
it.
been on there for like a year, so or more.
Years.
Okay, I'm just going to, if with everyone's approval, I would just like to flip this so that we do the wetlands review first. We do have a member who's feeling a little bit under the weather, and they are going to be recusing themselves on this application, therefore it would behoove them to kind of go home earlier. So with permission, I'd like to flip that so we work on the wetlands legislation. We just got back our final draft from our attorney, Rick, okay? And we will go over that page by page because we have a number of color coding, redlining, and we have some text commentary, which are not necessarily yet inserted into the legislation, but that we should consider. Those are in blue, I believe, right? The commentary questions.
Those are my
Still,
comments,
yeah. Okay, I just want to say this was great, what you put together, Rick. I'm really pleased with this final draft version. And thank you for taking the time to do that. I know it was kind of last minute for everyone. Hopefully you got a chance to look over it yesterday.
Yeah, I'm sorry to get it out kind of at the last minute, I just couldn't get to it earlier.
A general question, and this happened throughout it, there are strikeouts through paragraphs, but these are paragraphs that weren't in the previous version.
No, well, first of all, there were strikeouts that came with the version that I received. So somebody back, I think they had a committee back in July of last year that came up with the first draft. So I got it, 2 months ago, and then I worked on it since, and I've done some additional strikeouts, which I don't know if I've always highlighted my strikeouts, but some of these strikeouts go back to the original version, the original draft. For example, let's say on page 1, that subsection E at the bottom of page 1. That strikeout was in the original draft.
Sure, because the markup that was on the SharePoint thing didn't have section E.
Well, did they just delete it because
Yeah.
it already been, I've left it in there just so if anyone wanted to see what it had been. Probably by the time I do revise this, I probably, if we get close to a final version now, I would just delete that so you can start to look at something that's more like the actual law.
Makes sense.
Because it's confusing sometimes, you're reading stuff that's not gonna be there.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, does the town board want all of this background redlining?
No, well,
I would say
when
no.
they go to a public hearing or discussion, probably they want all that stuff should be excised. All the stuff that's proposed to not be there.
Okay, are we ready, or?
Yeah.
So where do you want to, did you want to
Just go page by page.
page by
I would
page?
say page by page, I think that's the only way to do this. Let me just note on page 1.
Okay.
I highlighted all the changes I made, but I forgot to highlight the very first section. So that 129-1, the original version that you were looking at, 129-1, I think just said policy. It was 129 for policy, right? And that.
You didn't have the
I didn't
authority.
highlight that change for some reason. I put in a new 129-1. I think, remember, this is a separate chapter in the town code. It's not part of the zoning code. It's a separate standalone chapter. So the first thing you generally want to do in an authority, what's my legal authority to adopt the law? So that's 129-1. It sets forth your authority, the town board's authority, which is predicated on several things, including Article 16 of the New York Town Law. And also there's jurisdiction in the Environmental Conservation Law, where the DEC gets some of its jurisdiction for local governments to also have jurisdiction, at least on a freshwater wetland.
Outside of plans, right.
So 129-1 is new. 129-2 is unchanged, except I changed the title. Okay, so now we get more into the substance of it. So, if you will, paragraph 2. Well, so right at the start, alteration. This, and some of the things you guys in the town board have to discuss and decide how you want to do things. And I don't even know, check that, alterations in the table. Yeah, it is. So an activity that would require a permit under your table, one of the activities is alteration. So it's very important. First of all, definitions are critical to any code version. You should define your terms. You get in a lot of trouble if you don't define terms. And then you gotta be careful about what you define it to be. If it doesn't match what you think you have, you've got a problem. So let me just read alteration in full. Because the question I think for you guys is gonna be, do you want to be covering all of this? Alteration is the removal and replacement or the covering of existing materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures using new material, elements, equipment, or fixtures that serve the same purpose without reconfiguring the space. Semicolon, reconfiguration of space, the addition or elimination of any door or window, the reconfiguration or extension of any system, or the installation of any additional equipment. That is a very broad definition, and it includes apparently things inside the building. Do you want to be regulating things inside the building for wetland permits? If they don't change the envelope of the building, for example, they want to move walls around inside, do you want to be looking at that?
No, I don't
Maybe
see
not.
why, well,
Now, suppose they want
If
to,
it's pre-existing, it's gonna be free, you know?
right,
I would say the only instance is within the building if they're excavating a basement deeper.
I was gonna bring that up, what do you want to?
But they changed the law recently on that.
Because I don't know that we clearly indicate whether if somebody were to install a basement, and again, you're within 100 feet of wetlands, you know, is that something you want to regulate?
So you can go above existing footprint, and then, but nobody said anything going below, you see? And then somebody went below, and they just did it, you know? But if you think about it, going below, it creates a lot of disturbance, you see? The dirt and so forth. So it would require, you know, silt-back fencing, whatever.
Bottom line is, the definition of alteration, because you don't want to box yourself into where you're now supposedly regulating a whole lot of stuff that you don't care about and that people may ignore, but then you're not following your own law. East Hampton Town uses a different definition of alteration, which generally involves physical expansion, although they do cover changing windows and doors. I'm just concerned that that's pretty broad, because right now, a permit would be required for any alteration, even for these internal structural changes, or even changing equipment. I mean, heck, you change your furnace, is that an alteration? It might be under that.
Into this definition, it might fit in there.
But in the table, that alterations are APR.
Yeah, but that's still permit. That still requires a
Still a
permit.
permit, but it's,
It could be
It could be
administrative.
administrative, but it
Fast
still
track.
requires an application and permit. I mean, even administrative, if somebody swaps out their furnace, I take it you don't really care about a permit for that, administrative or otherwise.
But we do care about a basement digging
So
out,
that's a different
or at least a few of us have already expressed, so. So is there a way to eliminate or this wording in such a sense that we can get rid of like what you just mentioned?
Yeah, so let me take a look at it. So
or just make it external,
You only. care about-
except for, and then separately address.
what's the purpose of regulating someone's replacing windows in a wetland? I'm not saying it's a bad
Yeah,
idea,
I mean,
I'm asking the question, it's the construction traffic that's the issue, not,
Yeah.
doesn't really have any other impact.
Bringing in big
It's no
trucks.
issue, you
Yeah.
know, it's just.
I know in East Hampton, we kind of go by like if it's in place in kind, then we don't require a special permit or a variance for windows or doors. So yeah, I don't see an issue with it.
Yeah, if it's pre-existing, you know, even though it may be non-conforming, it's okay. You know, that's the paradigm we have.
Well, what if somebody wants to gut their house and move the partitions around?
Well, then we fall into the other portion. about
Well, they have to get a
50%.
building permit for that. It's a different
It's
situation.
gonna be captured.
You see?
He doesn't need a building permit, which you'd need anyway, but
But what would you need a wetlands permit, you know, it's like.
that's my question.
I don't think so. Building permit will take care of that.
This was not even in the original wetlands set of definitions.
Correct.
Well, we have to.
That definition, no, I did not insert alteration. That was in the draft that I got.
Who inserted that?
We felt it was important to have all these definitions, including alteration, because I think it had come up, right? From what I remember.
I'm just saying, it wasn't in this document originally, alterations.
No, we edited it in the subcommittee.
If it's not affecting the footprint separate and apart from the basement, then I don't see the,
Is there a way to adjust
So-
it so that it remains as a definition, but it's more targeted?
Here, the East Hampton, I'm just thinking back to the East Hampton definition. East Hampton Town defines alteration as an increase in any of the dimensional, an increase in exterior dimensions. So not only an addition to the side, which we would cover anyway, but also, for example, if you're increasing, like you're raising the building, right, higher.
yeah,
That would be an alteration. Now, East Hampton does cover replacement of doors and windows, as I recall, not replacement of them, but removal or addition of, I think is the way it's worded. So if you install a new door, I don't know whether you want to regulate that as a wetland permit, but I'm just saying.
no,
Well, then that's a repair, which is.
That's
Yeah.
that's different.
Well,
But
in other words, in East Hampton Town code, if you were to install a new external door,
Yeah, but we're not East Hampton.
I know, I'm not saying that you should necessarily follow what East Hampton's doing. I'm just saying that's how it's done there. And I want to
No,
find out,
if
what do
you're-
you want to do?
If you're within existing footprint, you're free, okay? We just don't want any more expansion. That's it.
Okay,
That's it. Capiche?
you all agree?
Well, you're free up until you start demolishing more than 50% of
So
them,
do you,
which has happened to a few people.
but what about the basement issue? That we
Right,
just
I get the
discussed?
feeling that all of us are feeling that the
yeah,
basement.
we have to address that in,
But they've already addressed that. Isn't that in the code when is one contract, like, the code says you can go up and beyond existing footprint. But somebody went, contractor, a clever guy, he went below into the
Right.
foundation, existing footprint.
but the question is, it might be in,
Change that.
it might be in the building code, but that doesn't necessarily trigger a wetlands permit unless we put it here, right?
Well, it's a wetlands.
It can-
If it's in the wetlands, you have to,
Well, it depends where the water table is.
no, it depends what the wetlands is. The wetlands
So,
are,
yeah, of course, but you could still be on a hump.
I know you're thinking,
In the chart, it says new construction with enlargement upwards or downwards.
Okay, change it.
Footprint
Yeah.
you
requires-
changed it, you were there.
Got it, yeah.
You were there, okay, yeah, okay.
Oh, right, or downward. Thank you,
Yeah.
Meg.
There you go.
Right, I remember seeing that,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I'll make that clear,
Yeah,
it sounds like it was intended to cover basements,
Yes.
and
Yep.
we'll make that more clear.
So I think what's important is to distinguish between repair and an alteration. To me, it's not really clear.
it's vague and broad.
Because repair is no permit required.
Well, let me put it this way, the current definition of alteration, if you replace your roof, is that an alteration?
Well,
No, you can't deny, because that's
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, the way it's worded right now,
denying happiness,
the way it's worded right now, if
if the roof leaks, I'm not happy,
no, but also replacing a roof every, whatever, I think is under repair, customary, usual, and normal activity to restore the sound and good state of a structure after decay, dilapidation, blah, blah, blah.
And this is why the definitions are important, because right now, the definition of alteration, removal and replacement, or the covering of existing, so removal and replacement of existing materials, elements, equipment, or fixtures, well, elements, materials, that could include the roof.
Yeah,
I presume you don't want a wetland permit for replacing the roof.
Correct.
So if that's your intention, I'll adjust this, but right now, you would be capturing
adjust
that, you would need a permit.
Let's
I
adjust,
think everyone's kind of saying the same thing, Rick.
Yeah.
Right?
correct.
We agree.
All saying the
Let's
same
adjust
thing.
it.
Yeah, so we don't want to cover that.
No,
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
that's only part two.
That's all right, there's not that many pages here, so we're good.
It's gonna be a long night.
And dinner.
Okay.
Boardwalk, stairway, or walkway, that's pretty straightforward. I think I
Yep.
batched them all together. Because they're all kind of similar things, so they're all defined together. And I think I moved the 5-foot limitation to someplace else in the code, it shouldn't be in the definition. Building, I put in the definition of building, and that basically matches the definition of building in your zoning code. Buildings have roofs. If they don't have roofs, they're not. That's
Yeah.
right, that's it. Clearing, I did add a definition of clearing, because this comes up as to whether or not you want to be regulating clearing. So, I did, with some changes, largely draw from what the town of East Hampton uses. But you'll notice in my blue comments and also the sort of that dark highlighting above, the question, this is something that Sean had raised. Do you want to regulate people who are trimming some of their trees, let's say for review?
Yeah, so that comment was because the existing language allowed people to, and I thought it was too permissive. I am more than happy to claw back the ability for them to do any of that. Besides what I think is separately in the document, which allows for removal of invasives and just maintenance and things like that. So the more restrictive to me, I'm supportive of that. My only comment would be, for clarity, the removal of living trees, because I think separately we allow for kind of removing dead stuff and, et cetera.
So
you gotta be able to get rid of invasives,
Separately, there is a part of it that I think allows,
And
that says you can do that.
What's it, 4 foot high, 4 inches wide, you can, you can't, you have to leave that there, and then less, and then there's like 15 foot, you can go up for aerial view. I think it's not a bad way, how it exists now.
Yeah, and the question is, do these belong?
We have discussed that that is too permissive because people don't.
Wait, we have just
Yeah.
one conversation at a time, so, I'm sorry, David, let him finish.
We have discussed that that's too permissive because without some, and that was consistent with, I'm more conservative, so I'm happy to claw back and say, don't give people the ability to do that because they usually abuse it. My suggestion was trying to refine what was there, because if you say you can trim up to 15 feet, a 16-foot tree that somebody doesn't want there, they'll trim so that it just has this at the top because they couldn't give a crap about the health of the tree. And so it's not refined enough a definition to actually think about the health of what's there. It is kind of a brute force.
They're usually pretty good at it.
But we're talking about that, we're trying to move the bar from we trust people to the code addresses it. That's where we are today, I think, with a lot of this, is that.
We have the code,
Right, but this is a edit on that, we're trying to come to a better code and,
So for me, I'm happy to either refine what is there or to claw back and say, just don't give people permission to do that because, it's abusive and becomes, whatever. So that's my view. So I like your changes, which means my changes or suggestions are obsolete.
should I insert the word live or living here?
Yes, I believe you should, because later on it talks about invasives and dead and whatever, and it would just be clearer.
I was wondering, where did the 25 feet or greater come from? Because I know other
The
towns will use,
existing
PVH.
language just
Okay.
said you can trim up to 15 feet, but it didn't think about how tall is it already. So I was trying to come up with something that says, you take into consideration how big the tree is, of
Right.
sorts of, whatever, which becomes irrelevant if you're just saying you can't do that.
Right, yeah.
Just to
Another
qualify
option
for
is-
Sarah, when Sean says the existing, that's the existing draft.
Yeah.
I don't think it's in the code right now, I don't.
No, in the code, you're allowed to trim up to 15 feet, yeah, and it doesn't give any, there's no boundaries of how tall the tree could be, so it could be a 15-foot tree and you could just trim off everything, right?
hence it'll die and then you can just.
Yeah,
Yeah, just an alternative would be to measure diameter at breast height. I think other towns have a 12-inch and a 19-inch ordinance protection on trees, or you have to go get a permit to do any cutting. So it's just, something else to think about.
we have a whole, which you'll learn.
We have 4 inches
have
at 4 feet high,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, great.
You can't do
We
it.
have a whole separate initiative separate and apart from the wetlands, which is trying to establish a tree code
For
here that we
wetlands.
don't have. No, not for wetlands, just more
No, just-
generally, because we don't have any tree code here.
Okay, yeah.
So that's a whole different kind of ballgame, and we've tried not to overly address trees in a refined, kind of whatever, within different codes, because hopefully we'll address it in a bigger context.
Got it.
At least in this, I think it's fair to either, because we're addressing what is either existing language, either saying we're taking that out, or we're gonna put some parameters to manage what is already there, so to speak. Thoughts? I mean, do you want to claw it back and say no?
Well, I'm just wondering, when this tree.
We don't know this.
That's a Hail Mary.
Distant future.
So I got a customer of mine who is, the power company won't go to the house because he's not trimming his trees.
Yeah.
And and so finally he's trimming the trees. Like one tree is $6,500 to you, the second one's $4,500, the other one's $3,500.
Yep.
And we're going the wrong direction.
The wetlands is not going to have to do anything with power lines or do.
No, this is in the wetlands. This is not the wetlands. We don't do anything in the wetlands. We've got to stop using that word. Okay, when we write that code, don't use wetlands. We have nothing to do with wetlands.
Well, this chapter will.
This is, we're helping to
We're
write
all
the
about the
legislation.
regulated area.
We're
It's a
actually,
different thing.
well, we have a new regulated area. It's now in this draft 100 feet. We're not doing the 75-25 anymore.
Well, it's not going to work.
So it is in the regulated
Yeah,
area.
but it's not going to work. Because
I
the thing
disagree. I
is
think
that
it's going to
the
work.
wetlands law, listen, you got to understand, the wetlands law came in August of 2001. But the zoning code came in October 1959. See? So everything was already divvied up then. There's so many half-acre lots, three-quarter acre lots on the water. And so trying to make that work it's not going to work.
But
Just
Marcus, just quickly, those
Let's move on.
folks will still be able to do like Carpe and Silver Beach. There'll be a means for those people to repair, to fix in place in kind. They're going to be able to have their home where it is and still be able to fix it up. That's not the issue. This is about other, expansions in the wetland. We have to be careful with it. But I think this is kind of,
you can't do that anymore. You can't. Right?
well,
You can't,
this
you
is a
can't, you
dra-
can't, you
this
can't
is a
destroy
draft
virgin
with
land as
some,
well.
okay, this is a draft with new ideas for ongoing legislation that we would then be able to use as the planning board if and when we get back jurisdiction on wetlands, or if we don't, at least it'll be a new code that we can follow. But this draft is going to go to the town board, at which point they will discuss it further. But I think the consensus on the board, at least right now, is that we're moving in, and the subcommittee, and at the subcommittee level, we moved it to 100 feet. So that's as it came out of the subcommittee, that's where we were. That's where we are right now. I say no, I'm with Sean on this one about the trees. I would like to say a hard no on it, so. I think we should claw it back, but,
So can we move on? We'll leave it as a recommendation as you have it stated.
yeah.
Well, just to be clarified, so right now, there is no exemption for this 10 to 12 foot fleet.
Correct.
Okay. I mean, look, particularly with something with clearing, can be somewhat subjective, you have to hope that the people that are enforcing this use what I call the rule of reason.
Yep.
Guy goes out and trims one branch in his tree, you don't sign him for not getting a wetland permit, right? If he denudes the whole tree,
Well, yeah.
that's a whole different matter. But rule of reason.
Yep.
All right, shall I?
Yeah.
Keep going.
You'll notice at the bottom of page 3, I added definition of gross floor area.
Oh, can I go back one?
Oh, sure.
Enlargement, I think there's a
I
typo.
just,
Because you say expanding the area in plain view, I think you mean in plan view.
actually, I didn't change that.
Plain
It said
view.
plain view, and I assumed that that's what.
Well, everything's in plain view. I mean, you're
Plain view.
talking about expanding horizontally, which to me means you're looking in plan and it's getting bigger as opposed to looking,
Yeah, okay, that, just so you know, that was there, but you're right, they probably meant plan, I agree.
I can't remember.
No,
Well, it's, you know,
no, I don't think so.
You know?
I think what they're talking about is a person standing on the street,
Plain view.
Yes.
and it's in plain view.
Not planned, but, yeah.
It's
Right?
kind of like the average man rule,
Wow.
standing and looking at
That's
it.
what we're thinking of, yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing, and this, I know this happened to someone, a friend of mine in Orient. They had a barn. They were told, they were moving the barn. They were told the barn now has to comply with FEMA base flood elevation, so they had to raise it up. And the town said, you've altered the building because the roof is now higher than it used to be. It's an enlargement. But it's not an enlargement, they just raised the.
it'd be an alteration because you physically enlarged, you raised it in height, so that's an alteration. Or an enlargement, it's an enlargement a year.
It's, well,
Enlargement is.
I wouldn't consider raising the roof line if you raise the floor line in concert with that. You're not making the volume any bigger.
So now, okay, so let's address that. Do you want to be regulated? Do you want, and the classic example is somebody raising a house to comply with FEMA regulations.
Yep.
Mhm.
So are we talking
don't
about like
enlarge the
gross
floor.
square footage enlargement versus, right, isn't that the difference? Because if you're just creating a foundation to be higher up, the gross square footage of the interior
Let's
house
say
is.
adding a second floor, a
Well, the
dormer.
gross floor area wouldn't change unless you add another story.
Right, exactly.
Right, I mean, this specifically says adding a second floor, a dormer, or a raised roof line. Well, how do you define a raised roof line? Is that raised
Where
from?
are you reading from?
I'm reading the last few words of the enlargement section.
Look, I will admit, I didn't write this definition. The only thing I changed is I changed the word expansion, which I didn't like for reasons than to enlargement. But I'm looking at it and I do see this, like in plain view. That's terrible. What does that mean?
Not hidden, I guess what it means, you know.
You can have arguments on whether something's in plain view. I gotta deal with that. I'm gonna ask Kristen. I don't know what I'll do, but I'm gonna change it. And you can't have something say in plain view. People who argue, you can't see my property, it's not plain view. That's not.
Anyway, the raised roof line is a minor thing that will happen very infrequently, but it does raise an issue.
Look,
Expanding the existing footprint, I mean, it's kind of, right.
There's a reason I put the definition of gross floor area. It's a very handy measuring tool. If you increase your gross floor area, whether it's of a building or another structure, you have enlarged it. By definition, you've enlarged it. That's why I think this gross floor area definition is very important. I have to go back to the definition of enlargement and take a look at this.
All right.
To what extent do we need it if we regulate an increase in floor?
Right,
Thank you.
exactly.
Now, the question though that still remains is, whatever you don't increase your gross floor area, but you raise the building, so it's higher, or even you raise the roof and it has more volume, but it has the same floor area. Do you want to be regulating that? I mean, regulated as a wetland permit.
Well, there's height limitations, 35
Well, we're talking
feet.
about wetland. Do you want a wetland permit to increase the height of the building?
35 feet is fair enough, I think.
So you go from
20.
25 feet to 35 feet, you need a wetland permit. I'm not
Sure,
asking you
of
that.
course you'd have to get a wetland permit for that, but that's the maximum, that's a shelter-owned standard, it's been that way since 1959.
All right, well, we're not changing that here, we're not changing height here. I mean, in other words, let's come back to the most common scenario. Somebody wants to raise the building to comply with the FEMA first floor elevation, but they don't increase the floor area. Do you want a wetland permit for that?
Well, if it's,
I don't think, at least as I think about it, not because they're going up, it's because of what the construction activity would be in the area to do that,
yeah, I pretty much agree with that.
Right.
And could you,
This is within the 75 or the 100.
within 100,
which may be covered elsewhere, right? The construction activity you may be captured, if we think about it, somewhere else
And-
already.
And it has
Versus-
implications at the ground plane, even if it's not infilled.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
you could potentially do it as an administrative permit, but that does still require somebody to submit a wetland permit application.
Well,
I think it's the disturbance and bringing in vehicles and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
I mean, I would
It's
just-
not about the,
I would just think about that.
If they're digging, there's runoff issues.
Yeah, it's really about which we have to just dig in and look about what is the foundation, the structure, the whatever that would probably separately trigger it rather than the nature of the result, if that makes sense.
Just see what we're doing right now, just to be sure enough. Reconstruction with, no construction with enlargement. Reconstruction, no enlargement. Why not just enlargement?
But it has to be with an existing footprint.
Right now, on your table, no permit is required. Let's look what the code says right now. What the table says. Reconstruction with enlargement. Well, the table is a problem. We'll go back to that. Let me just note it. I'll think about this. But in principle,
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't it fall under reconstruction rather than, and so you'd be already covered kind of thing?
how
And then,
how do you want to handle it? So let me bring back my question. Do you want a permit required? Now, it could be administrative permit. Do you want a permit required or no permit required? If an existing building within the 100-foot, jurisdiction, regulated area, is raised. Permit-
yes, we want a permit, but not because that it's the result. It is because of the destruction
Right.
and
The activity.
reconstruction activity, which hopefully is already covered if we think about it in the
But it
definition.
could be as a result as well. I don't think
Yeah.
that's
Well,
an exclusion.
yes, I mean, it would seem, but
I think the reality is that anyone who's raising the building is probably doing so because they're doing so much construction activity. It's
triggering anyway, yeah.
required for FEMA compliance.
Right.
It's usually what happens.
Yeah, so it's, I don't think, it'd be very rare for someone just to volunteer to raise their building 4 feet or whatever.
And so the enlargement definition is used in you are moving beyond the existing footprint. Is that kind of the way it travels through the document? And so
No, you can't go
No,
beyond existing
it is-
footprint. You gotta be same footprint.
it is about the definitions, not about what you can and can't do. It is trying to say that then enlargement would trigger something by the
Right
definition.
now, we'll just read it. The very first sentence of it right now is what you're describing. Enlargement is any, and by the way, it's tautological to use the word enlargement to define enlargement, but okay, whatever. Any enlargement of footprint or bulk. Footprint is analogous to increasing your gross floor area.
Mhm.
You can't increase your footprint without increasing your gross floor area. By definition, the way I've defined it. Bulk would mean if you increase height, that's fine. So it sounds like if you go outside the footprint, or if you raise the height, that's an enlargement. That would be regulated.
Correct. So ideally, I think you could simplify the definition of enlargement.
Yeah, I gotta take another look at it. Again, I didn't change everything in here. That was what I inherited.
Mhm.
All right.
All right, can I move on?
Speaking of footprint,
Yes.
I'm the one who wants to leave early and I keep bringing that up. You say the footprint is the outside perimeter of blah, 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 or the base or foundation of a structure. But a structure can extend well beyond the foundation. So,
I mean, cantilevered?
yeah,
Again, I didn't, that
true.
definition was in here and I adjusted it. I like the definition of gross floor area. You'll notice that it's broken into two subsections. One is for buildings, things that have roofs on them. The second one is for things that don't have buildings, like porches and roofs, but patios and, swimming pools, everything else. And the way I defined it, and I use the same thing in the East Hampton Town Code, by the way, because I put that in there. Measure to its outermost extent. So foundation, no foundation, who cares? Measure, you have a structure, it's got physical dimensions. Measure to its outermost extent. If you make it bigger than that, you increase your gross floor area.
So you're including roof eaves, for instance.
Yeah, could, yeah. That would be, to me, that would be part of the roof, that would be part of the building. Unless you
But that's
deliberately exempt them.
That's not part of the footprint, according to this.
Right, that's right.
Not-
Footprint
not
and
as written, yeah.
gross floor are not exactly the same thing.
So where does the term footprint regulate anything?
Before, though.
It does show up, in some of the, regulations. Footprint is used in the substantive language in this chapter.
All right, well, maybe it doesn't matter, I have to see where it.
Yeah, you have to see, it shows up though, it is used, if otherwise I would delete it. Anyway, I have a definition of gross floor area, it applies to buildings, it applies to other things. You can increase the gross floor area on the patio, for example. And footprint, we just talked about it, very similar. Continuing man-made pond, obviously, we took that out, it's now found in the definition of a freshwater wetland, and meets certain requirements. Path or pathway, a path or pathway, I had to put in a definition of this to distinguish it from a walkway, which is an actual structure. Pathway would just be, dirt or sand path. Sean, I think it was Sean had asked about whether you can better regulate that to make sure that people don't exceed the 5-foot width. 5 foot is the allowed width if you're within the wetland regulated area. If they exceed that, it's a code enforcement path.
So the two things, one, and I could be missing it, I don't see where path or pathway is then actually referenced later as either,
I think it's in the table.
I don't see pathway, I think it's all walkways, so I don't know if that was an error, I might have missed it. But my distinguishing part was then, are we going to continue to allow pathways, which I don't have a problem with, and I'd like that you put in with the minimizing the whatever, but I would accentuate, even though it's elsewhere, of that then a permit would be required if there is a tree that they're looking to remove. They should.
That would be clear.
Well, you should, but why not, bootstrap it so that somebody can't read it and go, hey, it's going to trigger me into clearing. I mean, I don't see any reason why you don't bootstrap things so that there's referencing back,
Generally, you should.
right? Rather than just assume everybody knows it.
Right, no, I totally agree.
Yeah, it's not on the table. Actually.
There's still things here that need addressing, particularly in the table, and I'll talk about that when we get to the table. All right, we'll have to look. I agree, I don't know if the word path or pathway is. I was thinking more in terms of a board might give an approval, let's say, to a new structure, and it may designate a path or pathway to get to the shoreline that's within the regulated area.
Mhm.
So you already have a definition of path, and it says that paths shouldn't be more than 5 feet wide.
Right. I think that's good.
That's how it.
It was thought out like many decades ago. Because naturally, a human wants to go to the water, and if you don't allow him to go to the water,
He's gonna do it anyway.
you're gonna do it anyway, so just let, so you regulate it. Okay, 5 foot, that's it. Maybe we can regulate, a wooden pathway, make it see, okay, it can't be 5 feet, it could be 4 feet, say, I'm just thinking of my.
Well, that's a walkway, that's
Walkway.
right now, it is limited to 5 feet, 5 feet.
All right. Because you want to, if there's an emergency, you want somebody to get out of there.
Sorry, I don't know what I missed. My point was, I don't think you expressly, as far as I saw, say that a pathway is permitted. So we should say that so that it's not trying to, expressly say that. And then within requiring an administrative permit, say pathway that requires removal of living trees requires you to come and have a permit.
Well, if you're gonna put a pathway through a vegetated area, by definition, you're removing something.
But they're always going to be through a vegetated area.
Yeah,
Right? So you're either providing an exemption for a walkway and you're bypassing the clearing and saying expressly we're allowing that, which I think is what it historically did, which I think what we were trying to do is say you can still do that. We're putting in the caveat that you have to take the means of least invasive. Hopefully people live by that, but there's some then bootstrapping there to kind of keep people honest. But then if you're trying to go through where there's trees, you got to come to us. That was the way I was thinking about it. Like still giving people the freedom. We don't want to have to see every time somebody wants a path to the beach. But if you're starting to remove trees, but it is going to bypass the clearing of everything except trees.
I belong to the East Hampton Trails Preservation Society. There's no way you should have to remove trees to clear a path 4 to 5 feet wide. You just go around.
You go around
But
it.
that's, yep, well, you got to say it though. Because,
So you get one who's trying to do it.
yeah,
So, all right, but for pathway, first of all, most people that already have a house probably, and within a wetland or near the water, probably have a path to the water. So this is most likely going to occur in new construction on vacant land. Because if you already have something that's there,
Right.
near the water, you have a way to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to make it clear.
I mean, I was thinking, honestly, this is what I'm thinking, Sean, is we could put in a path as no permit required as long as you meet these parameters, which could be width and you don't remove.
that's what I was saying.
Yep.
That way they don't need a permit as long as they do what.
Yep.
I'm very good with that.
So you're basically bypassing, you're saying you're not subject to the clearing except for trees. As long as you stay 5-foot path and you do, right?
Sorry, so I'll put in that covenant path, that'll be allowed without a permit. All right, so we're on to definition of reconstruction, and I gave you guys an alternate reconstruction.
Which is really hard to read.
I know. It's easier on the computer. I can read it.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand that there's a 50% threshold. But is that, it's reconstruction only if it's less than 50% or
No.
more than 50%?
Reconstruction is if you are removing and replacing something that exists, and the traditional approach, the East Hampton Town Code uses it, but so do various federal regulations, like, FEMA's regulations. There's two ways to measure it, at least in East Hampton, there's 2 ways to measure it. One is a physical dimension. Are you removing or replacing more than 50% of the existing gross floor area? And the second measuring tool, which is notably hard to apply, is are you removing or replacing more than 50% of its value? Which I will say, and I've represented private landowners, is a very fungible concept.
Sure.
So you really have to be pretty abusive before you exceed the 50% value rule, because it's so easy to fudge numbers. But at some point, it's obvious that you've replaced it. So you can do it both ways. Let me really read the definition, and then I need your input on this, that's why there's a question. Hopefully I can do. The removal and replacement, this proposed alternate in green, so I'm gonna read. The removal and replacement in place and in kind, so it has to be in the same location. In kind, not exactly sure what that means. But
No, it's a good term.
it's not, you're not replacing a house with a restaurant. It's a house for a house, swimming pool for swimming pool, whatever. The removal and replacement in place and in kind of all or a substantial part of a pre-existing building or structure. If you tear a building down and build a new building of the same nature and size, that's reconstruction. You removed all of it. That's usually not where the problems arise. They arise in less than a full removal. So let me read it again. The removal and replacement in place and in kind of all or a substantial part of a pre-existing or building structure. The rebuilding in place and in kind of all or a substantial part of a building or structure which has been damaged or destroyed shall be included in this definition. So in other words, even if a fire burns your building down or damages part of your building, you have to replace it, a substantial part of the building, you would need a permit to do that. If the cost of the work in question exceeds 50% of the full replacement cost of the structure, as estimated by the building inspector, it shall be deemed to involve a substantial part of the building or structure. So if it's more than 50% in value, by definition, it's kind of a substantial part. And then finally, the word reconstruct, and then that means reconstruct means reconstruct, all that. So,
But is the way you're thinking about it, because I'm not sure that, I don't think the 50% replacement value is the only judging factor. And
Right.
so if that is, the way it's written, it would seem like it is. And so I think you'd want to say there's a rebuttable presumption maybe on that, but there is also other aspects
I
that
think you have
are,
to build the two sections together.
right?
Because the section I didn't.
The first part,
right now
okay.
deals only with floor area,
Mhm.
and then what I added deals with value.
Yep,
I think you should probably both.
yep,
Yeah, that's what,
agreed.
But you agree in principle with the 50% rule.
Mhm.
But I'm still not clear, so if it's over 50%, at some point it's new construction.
Well, we don't, new construction, look, if I tear down the building entirely and I rebuild the building in the same place and in the same manner, is that new construction or reconstruction? Either way, it needs a permit. So, I mean, I have to go back and see whether it's
Right.
treated slightly different than
Right.
new construction, but, you know,
Yep,
all right, let's keep going.
Well, new construction would be prohibited.
We'll talk about that too. We'll talk about what prohibited means.
Okay.
So I added a definition on page 5, I added a definition of structure. Because it's a good idea to have this is why I added a definition of building too. This chapter of the code did not have definitions of building or structure. So you should have a definition of structure. What is this? Sarah probably doesn't know the answer. What is a structure? What's the first word in the definition of structure?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Anything.
Yeah, well, yeah, anything.
Anything. That's
Yeah.
when I tell people these things, like, is that a structure? You obviously haven't read the definition of structure. It starts by saying anything. So if it's man-made, it's probably a structure. So that's kind of where it starts from. That way we include everything, even pathways. Now, not an unvegetated pathway necessarily, but if you put down boardwalk, if you're a walkway, you're your stairs, it's a structure. It's a man-made fabrication. It's a structure. And that makes things simple because at that point now, all structures are defined in the same manner in your covenant. Okay. Out of definitions, if we can move on, I'm moving on now, page 7. Artificial or man-made ponds, I added them to the definition of freshwater wetlands. This is on page 7,
Mhm.
D, in bold, yellow bold. If it's 1 acre or more in size, or if it's in the groundwater table, regardless of its size. But if it's not a groundwater table, it can be, 40,000 square feet and it's not a wetland. But if it's an acre or more in size, not in groundwater, or if it's any size and it's in the groundwater table, it would constitute a freshwater wetland.
1 acre, say, how did you arrive at 1 acre?
I just took it from the East Hampton Town Code.
It seems big, 1 acre.
It's pretty big.
Well, the thing is like you can't go to somebody's property and with a shovel and dig a hole, and it fills up with water and it becomes wetlands. And you can't do that because we had a case with Boatsy, remember off 114? And, he wanted to,
Oh, yeah.
you remember he wanted
That's
to take down a
okay.
tree because it was, I can't remember the exact situation, but he was trying to do, whatever he was doing, he was trying to do better for the environment. And then he had to get a wetlands permit to do that. So be careful with that. And that tree, that thing he had dug out there was man-made. It was a watering hole.
Remember that your code doesn't prevent somebody from building one of these. You don't, East Hampton actually does require natural resources special permit for most artificial ponds. Your code doesn't regulate. Somebody wants to dig out and create a lion pond in the property, they can do it, assuming they're not near wetlands already. The issue is that once they've created it, if it's above an acre in size or if it's dug into the groundwater, now it's a wetland, and you may have created it, but now you gotta stay 100 feet away from it. That's the relevance of that provision.
Yeah, I think it's relevant. I think it's, I find it, the wording awkward in that it's not on its face, the way I read it, clear that there are two aspects, 1 acre or more in size and or, penetrates the groundwater table. I mean,
Or 1 acre or more in size, or regardless of size.
Or which regarded, okay, the or which, I missed the or which, gotcha,
Seems okay.
gotcha.
Okay,
Rick, do you know off the top of your head, like, what's the threshold for DEC regulated freshwater wetlands, like the size? It's something I can look up too. I'm curious.
I think it may be less than an acre, I think, because I
Okay.
saw that recently, the DC changed their freshwater
Yeah.
wetland regulations recently.
Mhm.
The numbers 10,000 square feet sticks in my mind, but I'd have to go back and check it out.
Yeah, I can look too.
Quarter acre.
I'm just wondering, in Shelter Island, how many
You're
1 acre ponds there will be.
They're not gonna have.
Probably not too many.
So if it's kind of an irrelevant definition, shouldn't it be more relevant? I just can't
Well,
think of, you're
suppose,
going to have a large piece of property to do a 1 acre pond.
Nobody does stuff like that anymore, When we were kids,
Locally, yeah.
Frankie Klonowicz would dig out everything. That was a long time ago.
I mean, for me, it's really the penetration of the groundwater and that's captured, so I'm less concerned about it, but yeah.
The reason I'm asking the question, if you make it 1 acre, it basically means
Irrelevant.
that it's an irrelevant condition.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, but I just want to,
Yeah,
we're basically making it an irrelevant.
well, let me ask this question. Do you want, you can go either one of two ways. Do you not want to regulate ponds if they're not in the groundwater table, regardless of type? If they're not groundwater, we don't care. Or on the other hand, maybe you do want to regulate them even if they're not, but less than an acre. So which direction do you want to go in?
Well, aren't they already regulated by the DEC?
You want line? I don't know if you.
I could look, but I do know that the DEC maps aren't always accurate, like at small scales. Like I know in East Hampton, sometimes the DEC maps don't exactly match with what we have. So like you want to be ready regardless of what the DEC regulates, like
I do think that DEC's definition of freshwater wetland, I think it does have something there about artificial ponds. I just don't remember.
It's under their jurisdiction, and it has to do with organisms.
Like living in it.
Yeah, like Meg just said, it has to do with the living organisms that have now flourished there because of this man-made pond. That's where it becomes important to
I
DC.
don't know if that's how they're regulated though.
Yeah, that's how,
Well,
I'm pretty
Well,
sure.
if you need a permit, whether they'll grant you the permit is one thing, but is it subject to their regulation? They don't do that based on what's living there. They do that, I think they do it based on the size of the wetland, the man-made wetland.
See, the DEC has possession over any animal or fish, right? And then like, if I'm out fishing, once I take it in possession of me, it's mine, then I gotta deal with the deer, then it becomes our responsibility. So that's the way I understood it.
I guess I'm thinking of the origin of how the DEC came to regulate even man-made ponds. That's where it came from, basically wanting to ensure that any living organisms that had developed there, because of this pond didn't exist before and now it does, that's what they wanted to protect. That's why they showed
Well,
interest.
I think that's why you said it was thinking too. Look, at a certain point, you've created something that is now an environmental asset.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Even if you did it yourself, you made it. You made it yourself. You now, let's say, have an acre pond. Birds are gonna come there. Other wildlife is gonna go there.
And
That's why it's regulated.
But do you also want to be able to prevent someone who has this, man-made wetland from before, and they just say, well, I'm just gonna fill it in? I mean, do we want to just say, oh, well, this gets filled in? I mean, that's happened before.
So that's why, again, if you have certain parameters, once you create it, let's say you create it under this roof, You created a pond of an acre or more. You've created this asset, did it on your own, but now it's there. Now it's going to attract wildlife. It's going to develop a certain
Yeah,
ecosystem.
it matters.
You can't fill it in anymore.
Correct.
And you know that in advance, if I create this, it's going to be regulated. Why would I do it? So,
But that's why I'm bringing up the 1
Yeah.
acre.
Yeah.
The one acre
big.
is really
It
big.
becomes irrelevant, so
if-
you're focused then only
So
on
if you're
groundwater.
concerned
so
about, if
make
you're
it a quarter
concerned
acre.
about the reality of what the wetland de facto has been
Becomes, yeah.
created, an acre is too big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like who's ever
Yeah, maybe
dug
smaller.
out an acre pond, you know, I get no recollection of that.
It's not gonna happen, so
No, no, but
quarter
that's what the-
acre,
That's what.
That's my whole
So I
point.
think we should make it smaller, let's make it.
I think that's, I mean, you could build a house, as someone who, you know, does this, and say as a feature, I'm gonna have a 40 by 40 pond that's right up against the house. It's an architectural feature. Should that be regulated as wetlands?
Not if it's less than an acre, according to this.
I know, that's what I said. Maybe
They-
I mean, maybe that's too generous, but, you know, there's a size at which it's a feature, it's not a pond. And
That's why we're talking about the
It's like a trout
size.
pond that somebody makes
We're
and
not
it's
saying 1,600 square feet.
maybe quarter an acre?
well, a quarter acres is,
Why don't you say a half an acre? Half an acre is substantial.
yeah,
It's a sub-
Let's do it, okay.
1.5 acre.
Yes.
20,000 feet, more or less.
You want half an acre or 20,000 square feet?
Half an acre.
1.5 acre.
Just go with half.
Builder's acres.
People understand that, I think, more.
I'm just concerned about people trying to fill these things and when they inherit a property or whatever they buy and they decide, I don't like that. And then, once you've dug it out, you
you should
invite
see what it
life in,
becomes
and it
before
is.
you get to do that, yeah.
All right, the permit required thing, which is the table. I'm not sure we have time to, you really should go through this. This is not something I altered very much, because again, I inherited this. I did make some obvious changes to it, but it's very important that you put things in the right box. One thing I did do, by the way, this is what you asked me to do the last time around. The original table jumbled everything together. So I broke it open into 3 tables, which you'll see here, starts with prohibited activities, then activities that are on the other side of the spectrum that do not require wetland permit, and finally, the 3rd table is activities that require a wetland permit, which might in fact be an administrative wetland. So we have, you're not supposed to do it, you can do it without a permit, and the 3rd table, you can do it.
Can I just offer like a small suggestion here? It occurred to me when I was reading this over again. I just realized that a lot of people have just a reading issue with, I understand like, NPR, you can read the definition of NPR and its activity does not require it, but could we also just put what NPR stands for? I'm telling you, a lot of people have had trouble with this.
Other than at the beginning where it has a key.
Well, NPR is no permit required, and we don't actually write those words out anywhere here, so.
Well, no, at the top.
It does at the very top of the table, but it doesn't, as you scroll down, you
Top
lose.
of the table, but, no, at the top of the
There's only
table,
two
it's,
things.
wait, let me,
It's either NPR or PR.
but if you look at PR, it says activity requires wetlands permit. It does not actually tell you what PR, so I've had applicants say to me, and they keep going back saying, oh, that's this, and this one's this one. It's very confusing. Can we just put a simple little, just write the words out, is what I'm
If you
saying.
really,
It's silly, but.
first of all, the acronym society would complain about this. You can't have a P mean one thing in one acronym and another thing in another acronym. I mean, we have AP as activated, prohibited,
yeah.
PR as permit required. Permit shouldn't mean, P shouldn't mean permit and prohibited in the same table. It's,
That's a good point.
can't we just,
Further, you're speaking to the choir. Have you seen the new
That's
DEP
good.
freshwater wetland regulations? They're even worse.
the
You don't have to be like them.
So look, we agree, everything's gonna get spelled out, let's just move on.
Just use, just write.
Put the phrase, in,
Prohibited.
put what the actual acronym.
No acronyms,
I agree with you.
It's not clear to me.
move on.
We want clarity. Because there's too much vagueness,
I would say instead of
And the
A,
clarity, the most clarified thing is that table in the beginning when you open up chapter 129, it makes the most sense, Then it starts to go, woo, because like,
Julie, look at the freshwater wetland regulations we see right now. They have X, and there's X's in parentheses, and it's like,
Okay, good, let's.
all right.
all right, so I'm gonna make that clear, I'm sure to do that. But one of the things I would ask you to do, because I don't think we're fully finished with this, go through the table, and town board would love to do this too. Make sure you put things in the right category. Because, if you put in the wrong category, you're gonna get.
Yep.
And that also leads to, which we'll talk about, coming up to, prohibited activity. The very first table there is prohibited activity, which right now only has, a handful of activities. These are things that would normally be prohibited within the regulated area, which is 100 feet from wetlands. That's a lot of stuff. That can be a lot of, right now, I'm showing the shelter, town of Shelter Island, you have lots of structures that are within 100 feet of wetland, all right? And one of the things I did, and we'll come to it, is the code as it was this original draft didn't really say what happened. No, you can't do it. I can't do anything. I can't change I can't. So you have to allow, there's gotta be some leeway. That's why there are variances in zoning laws.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that. All right, you're done with the table for now?
Yeah, I guess there's a presumption, but yes, I think you have to at some point have an explicit statement that says where the planning board or the town boards decides XYZ justifies they can override a prohibited activity.
So
Right, I mean, we don't really want to do that a lot, but right, it has to be.
Zoning in the United States goes back to the 1920s. And when the first zoning ordinances were enacted, obviously they were legal challenges. And it went to the US Supreme Court, I can't remember the original one. The bottom line is, the courts were impressed by the idea that there were safety valves. If you have a legislation, zoning laws that say you can't do this, absolutely not, complete prohibition. The court said, well, there will be circumstances
Yep.
which warrant relief, so you have to build that in. That's why we have variances in
Yep.
zoning. And you'll see I did that below here. All right, page 9, we are moving along. So page 9 now, I see in bold.
So we, just to go back, two things. One, we said pathways is not in here and we're gonna make
Yeah,
that
we had
adjustment.
that. Yeah.
Secondly, on fences, we have fences in there, but we're not addressing anywhere what is the standard that applies or what is the context. And so I think the permit would be for a new fence or replacement of more than And then separately, there should be, which I think is what we discussed, if there's agreement, is something that talks about fences and says, fences where this is what we discussed, I think we discussed last time, but I put it out there, of fences that are facing a wetland will leave a reasonable distance to allow for a wildlife corridor, and that distance will be determined based on the need, the circumstances of what is the need for the fences and and that is going to have to just evolve over time. That's the way I see it, rather than saying you need 10 feet because if it's a small lot, or what have you. But what we're trying to do is stop fences going up right against the wetlands and leave some room. And there's going to have to be some precedent that's set over time based on what is the circumstances of the property of where that fence goes. Because I don't think you can do a hard line of whatever.
This is how fences are dealt with in the table right now. First of all, they're not explicitly dealt with as new fences. Therefore, presumably they would be new construction, like a fence within 100 feet of the wetlands that wasn't there before would be treated as new construction, which means on the face of it, it would be prohibited. So And that could include deer fences, because we're not distinguishing. Then if there are existing fences, if you look to the bottom of the table down on page 8, I
Mhm.
inserted, Sean, I think it was your idea there. I put in
Yep.
existing structure. Permit required, could be an administrative permit, for the replacement of more than 50% of the existing posts and more than 50% of the linear feet. You have to decide to what extent you want to regulate the fences. I mean, do you want to? Because remember,
From my point of view, we're not going that we've done nothing and allowed people to put fences anywhere to no, we're prohibiting fences. I think the middle ground is you're required a permit if you're putting in a new fence and or you're adjusting more than 50% of an existing fence. And we need to set a standard of, well, so how are we going to decide how much fencing is allowed? And there has to be some mention in there of there's a desire to establish an objective to establish a wildlife corridor. My presumption is that we would do that through pattern and practice of decisions we make of what is reasonable, because I'm not sure that we can just take an objective like 10 feet or 20 feet, because it's going to depend on the property and like where a pool is and, you know, those kinds of things. That's what I was thinking.
one thing I added in here, this is on page, page 14, 129-9 is special additional standards and safeguards. I put in for boardwalks and fences. I can add something here for fences. And I can say something about, we don't have to be specific, because you're right, you can't, you're not gonna put a linear distance figure here. For fences, that the desire to afford, how do you want to say it again,
A
Sean?
wildlife corridor.
That would then be a factor in the permit review.
Does that make sense?
Well, I'm just thinking of the wildlife we have on Shelter Island, and it's hard to think of one that can't go climb over a fence or go through the holes in it.
It does, it dramatically changes. I mean, look, a lot of people don't love the wildlife here, whether it's deers or whatever, but if you put a fence right up against wetlands, the birds don't land there as readily, right? Because they want to land near the wetland, so they're going to go elsewhere. If you have a deer running along, they're not necessarily going to start jumping over the fence, keep going down. They're going to change their direction and try to go somewhere else. And so what we're trying to do is like continue some natural pathways of, and we do have migrating birds and everything else, and they don't. If you have a fence that's right up against, you know, the wetlands, which we allow now, they're not going to land probably within the fence. They're going to likely land go somewhere else. We're not creating a fertile environment for the habitat.
I mean, I'm thinking about the fence I have around my fig trees, you know? Well, the birds land on the fence and then they go eat a fig.
Well, and that's fair enough of thinking like, do we need to distinguish fencing around a tree versus a yard fence, right? You know, I mean, there are people along, I'm just thinking of, and not like throwing anybody under the bus, but we've looked at stuff along in the Heights, and there are existing fences like as far as you can possibly go, and nobody else has it except one or two neighbors, you know, whatever, and it kind of changes the whole dynamic of the.
It's a complicated issue, because then are we talking about deer fences, pool fences, security fences, scenic, you know?
But this would be fencing in the wetland, like,
The wetland.
I mean, you wouldn't be able to put your pool
Yeah.
that close to the wetland anyway, so it would be, you know.
But where there's existing people do this, so there's an existing, you know, there are existing pools that are already within the regulated area. And instead of putting the fencing, like, you know, you give 10 or whatever feet outside the pool, so you have a protected area, they just do the whole lawn.
Right.
So, you know, and yeah, great, you have grandkids and you don't want them running to the wetlands or, you know, or what have you. But, you know, I think what we're saying is ideally you want to bring them back in where you can.
So why permit the fence in the wetlands at all?
Because there are things already, you know,
Pre-existing stuff.
pre-existing stuff,
I mean, other
or,
than pre-existing,
you know, whatever, maybe just,
Within the regulated area.
yeah.
within the regulated area, exactly.
I mean, I'm trying to be like,
I don't
you know,
know, but-
not the hard line, because there's also, you have pre-existing, and then you're also going to have people where they haven't built yet, and they don't have alternatives, and.
May,
You could also
Yeah.
have someone who builds a pool outside of the regulated area at 101 feet, and then they still have to put a pool fence.
Yeah,
around it,
exactly,
so
yeah.
they encroach into the
Yeah.
100 feet. Like, you have to make an allowance for people to put a
Mhm.
fence in the regulated
Well, then
area.
they could move their pool,
But
not,
they don't have to.
Yeah.
because they're outside of the regulated area.
Exactly, yeah.
It's just the fence ahead that's gonna
Exactly.
get stuck on.
It's just wetlands. You're just regulating that 100 feet of water and
I mean, I think we're almost there. I would just think you may want to give some thought, counsel, to do we need to fiddle with the definition of fence, or is it going to be obvious on its face?
I don't even think we put a definite fence in here. That's
You
why
know.
we go that far.
Right, so like, just without getting overly complicated,
I think that
but,
starts getting overly complicated.
What's gonna happen is,
Yeah.
particularly with deer fences, I'm just gonna tell you with deer fences, and the more you try to regulate, people just gonna ignore the law, they're gonna put them in. That's what will happen. Pool fence is harder to deal with.
but that's,
Deer
that,
fences, they-
and I get it,
put 'em in there.
I get it, but that, like, I love hate when people say that, because that does not mean that you don't put regulation in.
No, I agree.
Right? Is that, because people are going to disobey, but then when you find them, you slap them, you fine them, you tell them
But they're so hard to find.
whatever.
My point is that you want to strike a balance so that they're not incentivized to just say, screw it, I'm gonna just do it.
No, I get it. There's a goal here that I think we've
How about, like,
talked
permit
about.
required, and we don't say, prohibited? That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Just come for a permit and.
Yeah, I say come for a permit. I just want to try to establish,
So,
like I said, a wildlife corridor or something, so that people come in and they go, well, I got a permit, but then like, what is the guide of what you're allowing and not allowing? And our goal is really only to have a wildlife permit, perimeter.
Right, so what does East Hampton Town do for like fencing that's in the wetland?
It's interesting, in the wetland.
You can tell me too.
In the
And
regulator.
East Hampton, this predates Sarah. East Hampton for a long time, what fences were by and large were ignored. Okay, they really didn't pay much attention to them. Today, if I were to submit an application in East Hampton and I show fencing on it, proposed fencing, or existing fencing that wasn't legal, the town is gonna, if you're within 100 feet of the wetland, you'll need a variance for the fence. It could be a wire deer fence, you'll need a variance for. People generally don't want to go through that, and therefore you're going to find lots of applications where the fence is already there, because people, that's to expect someone to apply for a special permit and a variance to put up a deer fence, most people will not go through that trouble. Plus, they might be denied too. So they're likely to just put it up, and if they get caught, they'll take it down and they'll put it back up again. Because remember, deer fence, I'm talking especially deer fences, because it's relatively inexpensive, hard to see, but it'll show up in a survey, because the surveyor has to show.
Yeah. And if the neighbor objects because everything around you doesn't have it, then they'll call it in. So,
But so East Hampton would, technically a fence in East Hampton within 100 feet of wetlands would need a wetland setback variance and a permit.
I think you make it like an APR or whatever.
Right.
Okay, move on.
Well, we had jumped down to 14 because of that definition, right? But we're going back to,
So we're on page 9 now.
correct, 9, yeah.
All right, I'm gonna skip past changes on page 9, they're pretty self-explanatory, you dealt with them in the clearing. Page 10, the top of page 10, surveys have to show the wetland boundary and proposed site improvement, that should be obvious, but that was not in there. Page 11, we're on 129-7, the full wetland procedure. Just one thing I want to make a comment here. This is written as though the town board is reviewing the wetland permits. If the town board, and I thought about maybe just putting down the reviewing agency in case the town board wants to change it someday, but if they ever want to change it, you just have to change it. If some other board someday other than the town board is reviewed, we'll have to amend the code to either insert the new board or to just say reviewing board, and then somewhere in the chapter you say, and the reviewing board is the. Also, 129-7A2, I made clear that you don't submit an environmental assessment form if you're a type 2 action. Most wetland permits are probably going to involve single-family homes, and they will be type 2 actions, meaning exempt from secret.
this is this is type 1 action.
Meg, did you have a comment? Did you want? No? Meg?
Well, it just says, if the proposed activity is classified as a type 1 action or an unlisted action,
Right, then you have to submit the AF.
Okay, I see,
Yeah.
you just did it.
It's sort of, I took the language as it was worded, that's how I rewrote it. But it would be, I agree, it would be simpler to say that if you're a type 2 action, like most single-family residential, you don't need to submit the AF.
Yeah.
Or the AF. Okay, moving along. Well, this is important, because I think this is the way I know this is the way you've been doing it right now, it's what your code says. So with we're in 129-7, which is the full wetlands permit procedure. If you go to the top of page 12,
Yeah.
it's under subsection C. Right now, the town, at least the code, says that if you need a state or county permit, the town board won't begin to review your wetlands permit until you show them the county or the state permit. So first of all, that can happen very often with the state with wetland permits, but you're telling the state, finish your whole review process with the state, get a state DEC permit, then come see us. If you're not type 2, by the way, that won't work because you should be coordinating your secret review. And again, most things are type 2, but you should be coordinating with the state. But in any event, you're forcing that process to become serial rather than, run on parallel tracks. With the county, Suffolk County Health Department is notoriously unwilling to do secret review, even make a type 2 declaration. They always rely upon the town or village to do that. So the county won't issue a final, in my experience, the county won't issue its permits. If a wetland permit is required, the county will not issue its final permit till the local wetland permit has been issued. So as I wrote in my blue, and I know it's a little hard to read, it's kind of very burdensome to tell an applicant they have to go through one step at a time, finish with this agency before we even will look at you. And I just think that's unnecessary.
So you think it can be simultaneous?
I think it should be simultaneous.
That makes sense to me. Okay.
So I deleted it, that's why I struck out the blue there. Oh, also, last time around, we were talking about the duration of, just a place. Well, I'll mention here, we were talking about the duration of the public hearing notice. And the code says right now, or the code's proposed, it says 30 days, which effectively means, now again, this isn't before the planning board right now, but that's 30 days is a long time. If it was with a board that meets monthly, like the planning board or the zoning board, it would be 2 months because you'd have to schedule the public hearing, put it in the newspaper. Now you don't have 30 days to your next meeting. So it's 60 days. And so elsewhere in your code, you do use 10 days as a notice. I looked at the zoning code for many things. It's a 10-day notice requirement. So I would suggest you have a 10-day public hearing notice requirement like you do elsewhere in the zoning code. Okay. Okay, we're getting toward the end, and this is important stuff. So 129-8, we're on page 13 and 14. 129-8 are the standards for permit issuance. The standards for the permit are one of the most important things in the code. And actually, what was in it was not bad. And you'll see, I didn't make a lot of changes, but I did, I think, bolster it. And you'll see all the stuff in yellow, most of which is red, which means I changed it since our last meeting. I tried to, kind of bolster the standards for review. Remember, this is standards being issued by, right now, would be the town board. There'd be some other reviewing board, the town board ever changes. And I did, by the way, I think, Sean, I think it was your idea to look at A5.
Yeah. I clearly love that. And so I'll make a few comments. One, I love whatever it is, page 12 and page 13, because I think it goes a long way. The bolstering in part, I think, helps with our, really mostly predates me, but, and most of us is, or all of us is, we've debated this, people have come and what is a practical alternative? And people, said, well, practical alternative because it's what I want, 2 kitchens and I want a porch and there is no alternative to what I want. So I think the reasonable use and enjoyment and all of that tailors it down so that you can make that argument much more discreetly. The 2 comments I have is one, in number 3, the town board shall attempt to locate proposed new structures. I mean, that's odd language. It's either,
Town board.
It's not the town board who's locating the structure or whatever, but, we know what you're getting at, but, it needs to be worded.
I agree.
Right. And the other is what I have struggled with, and I think we're kind of there, but I would like to bootstrap it further, is where it says, and it's old language, practical alternatives are constructed entirely outside the regulated area, presumed to have less adverse effects. I would ideally like to add a statement that says, the objective is always to reduce or eliminate any existing square, footprint within the wetlands area, because she's already shaking her head back there. Just let me finish. Because what I think that what we need to decide is, what we've had a lot of is people come and say, I have these 3 structures on my property, and the standards seem to be historically, in many cases, applied of, as long as you're doing no additional harm. So you basically get a credit for all the square footage you've had there before to use how you want going forward. To me, that is ridiculous. Like, I think that if you are going down and taking out your footprints, you go back to square one, and, you have to justify why you need it there in the first place. And so, if you have a barn over here and you're destroying it and you're renovating your house and you say, well, I'm just going to use that square footage, but it was already there, so I'm just going to add it onto my house, and the wetlands is no worse off.
It doesn't work that way.
But that has historically, that's the way historically, there have been cases where people are, I think, at least as I've seen many applications where they say, this is what the previous square footage intrusion in the wetland is, and this is what the current, is in the new. And
Combining.
Yeah, you can't.
but they're constantly trying to make that analysis.
What's gonna make that? So-
Okay, but do you believe, I guess the question is, Meg, do you believe that someone has a right, if they're knocking down structures, just say at the extreme, they're knocking down structures and starting anew, and they have 5,000 square feet within in the current regulated area. They're knocking down and starting new. Do they have a credit to use that 5,000 anywhere they want?
No, they don't.
Okay, so that's all I'm saying.
Right.
And so why not just make that statement clear so that no one can come and make that argument of, I'm not making it any worse than it was before, because our goal isn't not to make it any worse, it is to make it better.
Sean, where are you talking about putting this?
Well,
Yeah, it wasn't clear.
129.8.4 has the statement in the second paragraph that has always been there in the, whatever, is that alternatives outside or the buffer are presumed to have less adverse impacts. I just don't believe that that's ever been fully utilized to say, get it out of the wetlands. Like, if you're starting anew, move it out. It's kind of like we do this bargaining with people, and I think we should take more back control of that process. Some of that is going to be when people come, we're going to have different conversations now with the 100 feet, but why not make that affirmative statement that just bolsters that? It already kind of says that, so you could apply that language as I'm saying already. Why not just bolster it and say that the objective is always to achieve the least impact by, and it could require that you lessen or eliminate existing.
Let me see, I think your point is that if you have existing structures
Yep,
and you want to do something new,
yep.
what should you do? You should try to move the existing structures out?
No, if they're knocking down, so I mean, we already say that within your existing footprint, you can go up. But we have had historically, as I believe in
There's
whatever.
a difference of opinion.
Is a difference of opinion of how things go of, look, is it the case if somebody wipes their slate clean, right? Clearly they have to come.
Reconstruction.
Yeah, clearly they have to start again. A lot of the arguments that people make is, but I'm not making it any worse. I already had previously 5,000 square foot in the wetlands. Now I have only 4,000, or I have 40, 999. What's the difference? But they might have like 500 feet, or 2 acres behind them, that they could move the house back if they wanted to. I would like to say to them, if you're wiping the slate clean, go back.
Okay, but you have an inherent problem with that. That is that it's something that someone's doing voluntarily. So they conclude that the burden of moving their house away from the wetland and maybe the shorefront or whatever
Yeah.
is greater than.
They want a new house, but they don't really want it farther away.
Right, so, but
So-
they might say, you know what, then screw it, I'll just renovate my existing house.
Well, and that's an alternative for them to do, right? But if they are at the point where like, hey, I really need to start anew, why would it not be a conversation from the very start? And you could argue that the language already does
Yeah,
that.
that's what I'm thinking.
It does, but there's history here. So I'm trying to
Isn't it also-
distance
isn't it
ourselves
also
from the
covered
history.
in 5 now? Like, this isn't also kind of now covered in 5 with
Yes.
new wording?
Yes, and so so I guess the question is, if everybody kind of agrees with what I'm saying, that why not bolster the language to just make it even more evident that it is not out of the question that you actually have to eliminate any square footage that you previously had there if you have the room to do it.
So can I just,
You want to say
May-
something?
Yeah, so I hear what you're saying, and yeah, we've had people who, if they choose to completely demolish and rebuild, they can move it completely outside of the wetlands, and we've made that recommendation, but if they don't want to move it completely out of the wetlands, they have the right to still file a wetlands application.
Absolutely.
Negotiate with the town.
But that's the thing, is who has the power in the negotiation? Because if it's not the existing footprint, we should be able to say, nope.
Okay, let me finish my thought,
Right.
please.
Yep.
So let's say, yeah, you say, no, you have to be outside of the wetlands, that's it. Follow basic building, right? There may be a whole bunch of things that we could require them do if they did do a wetlands permit, if they were, let's say, 10 feet inside the wetlands. We could get a whole lot more out of them than if we say, nope, keep it outside the wetlands, avoid the permit, do your basic building, your basic 2-inch rain capture, your basic, but if they want to encroach in the wetlands in that 100 foot, all right, now I want capture for 4-inch rainfall. I want to make sure that you have more plantings. I want a buffer. I want, X, Y, and Z. You can negotiate a whole bunch of things with a wetlands permit that you can't do with a basic building permit. That's why you need to have that option.
I absolutely agree. So nothing what I'm saying is absolute, because you're always going to be able to say you can. But if we're not asserting that we're removing ourselves from previous precedent where somebody says, well, but in the past, right, it was kind of like, basically, as I would argue, I'm not making things any worse. Right? So why would we not want to pull back that power and say, that's not the starting point here, right? We can have a conversation.
But Sean, you also
Right.
still have to protect the applicant who's just doing that replacement, or they're just,
But that doesn't change
they're already
that if-
there. They
That doesn't
can't go
change
out.
that.
So-
It's talk about if you were you've
So
destroyed
you're not talking
everything.
about the main dwelling, you're talking about these accessory things these
No,
structures that
because
might be
people
demolished.
destroy the entire, we've had applications where people destroy the entire existing structure, and their new structure, even if they could go all the way outside the wetlands, they still try to keep some of it in the wetlands. And we think, well, gee, it's maybe a little better or the same as it was before, so what's the difference? Does that make sense?
No, you don't make.
Wait, let me say something.
We never allow anything in the wetlands. You got to get that right, okay? called the regulated
Let's not get
area.
focused on the terminology, it's about
No,
the
it's
concept
just-
of.
Because you.
Okay, hold on, I want to say something, Marcus.
Sure.
This is, what I'm trying to incorporate is what you're saying into specific things that we have dealt with. And from what I'm hearing, it sounds to me like I'm just referencing something where we had houses side by side, coming right to the edge of the buffer. And the two houses each had their own swimming pools, and they were pushing into the vegetative buffer. And the reason they negotiated, the reason they, I think this is to your point, I'm just trying to understand it in more practical terms. The reason they negotiated is there was an existing structure from probably 1940, literally right on the water edge. And they were going to remove that, so they were improving the situation. But they were not moving their structures back far enough so that everything would fall outside of the regulated area. And they, as I recall, used sort of the argument that you, is that?
Absolutely. And and what I'm not saying is we couldn't, we could still say okay if we thought that it was reasonable, but,
Okay, so just
and I think we can in the
stop
current
for a
language.
second,
right?
Sean. So, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
So how do we just make, I think what you're saying is actually fairly straightforward and simple. So what is some verbiage that would clarify what you're saying?
Before we get to the verbiage, it's already stated in the table with 2 letters.
It is.
It says new construction is prohibited.
It is. And so
What more do you need to say?
it is. What I'm trying to do is where possible, and you guys can say, look, it's not necessary, it's overkill. Fair enough. But I'm making the point. There are precedents out there. The more we change bits of language to say this is actually like moving the ball, which a number of things do already here. So yes, that conversation can already happen. Somebody's doing totally new construction. We could just say no. And they want to say, but it's not any worse than it was before. No, we can do that. We can do that now.
We don't have, it already says it in the code.
May, go ahead.
It's really just a,
Sean, you're thinking of things that are happening under the current code, right? The current code allows construction in the 75 to 100-foot range. That's just the trigger for a wetlands application. Construction's allowed in that area under the current code. This code prohibits it in that area. So what is happening now is because legally they're allowed to do it. So we're trying to negotiate the best outcome because they're allowed to do it. So
I totally get that. I think that my concern is that we're still going to have people come and.
well, yeah, people are people. They're gonna
Right, they're going to come and they're still going to try to bargain for it, right? And we always have the ability to overwrite it. And so the more we kind of bootstrap that and within the code that says like our goal is very explicit. It is minimization, fully, right? And if you guys are like, look, it says it, we'll do it. It's going to be in practice. That's fine. I'm just looking to further bootstrap because I think when you add little bits of language here and there, when somebody tries to cite precedent that is close to saying, well, yes, the law changed, but you did this before or that before.
So you're just
where we
talking
can
about
say
putting in a qualitative goal.
exactly.
Why is that, wait.
I don't know why that's objectionable if it's already.
Why is that so hard to do? Why can't we just put a sentence that's a qualitative goal? It's not complicated what Sean is asking for. It sounds complicated because of the way you're presenting it.
Well, I apologize.
But it's not complicated.
I mean, I said it's really just, you can just say that the objective is to minimize or eliminate, intrusions into the regulated area. Period. It just is a little bit more like bootstrapping.
Do you view that as being at variance?
I mean, that's what this already says.
That's
It says.
That's fine. We can move on. If no one agrees with it, that's fine. I can move on. I'm trying to bootstrap to just add a little bit more that,
I think eliminating the AVB, which is where all of that horse trading used to take place, goes a long way.
I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful, but it's going to play out in practice. And so I'm trying to bootstrap.
I feel like a lot of the ones that you're thinking of, it's not always necessary where someone's trying to play with the dwelling. It's the extra amenities that they're trying to put into this calculation. So really, it's the dissuasion of this calculating that you're saying, well, I have this and this, and therefore that equals my ability to then go up or whatever. That's
little
what you're
bit of-
trying to
yeah.
get rid of.
It's some of all of that,
So
yeah.
I just want to make sure that we don't put anything, even if it's qualitative in here, that could somehow hurt the people who are trying to do the right thing, and they're already there, they're already like on the wetland boundary because of pre-existing stuff.
It would be a goal, and it would not, whatever. I'm just
just-
expressing my opinion. I'm happy to move on. I'm just looking at Bootstrap to have another objective in there that helps.
Careful, because you can lose it all. You know, we can even lose the 75. There's a court case out there that's saying, you know, us regulating even the 75 is unconstitutional. And if that gets out, we try to push it to 100, it's be real trouble. We'll lose the 75.
Okay, I've made my point.
Had 100.
This is a new law.
Right.
The biggest,
Yeah.
and I have very little experience with the old law, but I had that one case on, what was the first thing I dealt with on the, up on the bay at,
The Heights?
what was it?
The Rand's Head Inn.
No, that residential,
Present.
Cheekwood Avenue?
Crescent?
Cheekwood Avenue,
Yeah, yeah.
Cheekwood Avenue.
Uh,
I have to say, I do not like the existing code and the vegetated, the adjacent vegetated buffer. So to my mind, first of all, the replacement of that with this, which is really more of a 100-foot setback standard, is a big advantage. And the regulations are different, the standards, I'm only dealing here with 129.8. These are the standards for permits for things that require permits. I haven't gotten to the section I added about the things that are supposed to be prohibited in the regulated area.
Yep.
So precedent will have very little value. The code change and the code.
I've made my point. That was my only point of just bootstrapping. My
that's
only
how it's
other
done.
real point is, which hopefully we'll address, is that we talked about the idea of whether it's slopes or what have you, when somebody is right up against the buffer, what could we use as a relief valve so that somebody doesn't say, I'm building right at 100 feet, but it looks like, and they don't technically have to require, apply for a wetlands permit, but it looks like there's going to be problems.
Right, because how are they going to access the area
Yeah.
to build it? Okay, so people that
So-
build right up to it, how are they going to,
And you said you don't want to give this to discretionary power, blah, 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 but we did talk about if you put something in there like that, you would be able to capture slopes where, right, or something where it is so clear on its face, you are not going to build that and do it all from this side. And you're trying to avoid going through a wetlands permit, but you're clearly going to.
is that something that can be done at the application level? Like when they come in, we say, listen, since you're right up against the line as it is, as you design.
That's what I'm trying to put in here, where we say like,
Well, remember, if they don't make an application because they're building outside the regulated area, then you have no application.
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, so let
Then
me-
the building inspector should be able to
Yes,
say,
so-
you need to go to them.
Clearing is now regulated within 100 feet,
Mhm.
right? So when an applicant comes in, they propose a new building right on the 100-foot setback. The building inspector, I think, does have this discretion to say, well, I don't see how you're gonna build that without clearing into the regulated area. That requires a permit.
So
The house may not require a permit because it's more than 100 feet.
it's going to fall under clearing.
Yeah, because of clearing, the clearing that they.
Clearing in most cases fair, but it could be that there's nothing there to be cleared and they're still gonna,
Well,
go around it. And if
well-
the view is, well, then it's probably not that big of a problem, or whatever. That's fine. I mean,
Well, that's why in my
Right.
comments at the end, I mentioned,
yeah.
you follow the DEC matrix system with the stupid acronyms and all that, which I don't like. East Hampton took a totally different view, and I think, as far as I know, with East Hampton town, the only town that's like this. If you're within a certain distance for structures that generally 100 feet from wetlands, you need a variance and a natural resource inspection permit. If you're within 150 feet, meaning outside the variance setback requirement, you still need an NRSP. That's how East Hampton dealt with that exact problem. But I'm not gonna try to change the way Shelter Island's done.
Look, if we think clearing is gonna capture 90% of it, then fine. I'm trying to anticipate that, what people are gonna do, and that is there a relief valve. But if you think that that's gonna be rare
Even if the
without,
law pushes them to be 100 feet from the wetlands where otherwise they might have tried to inch into it, the setback area, then you've achieved part of your purpose, just by pushing them back.
Because it's like here, digging, scraping, cutting.
I get it.
Burning, I mean,
I
it's
get
got all
And clearing, yeah.
ground cover, including ground cover. I think it's all right.
Getting close.
I think that covers everything for me. I know that's surprising to all of you, but
Can I just finish,
I'm fading fast.
can I wrap this up?
And you said, yes,
All right, so page 14, we're on sections 129-9 and then 129-10. 129-9, and this is like an expandable section. I put in specific additional standards and safeguards for certain types of activities. So right now I put in language about boardwalks and stairways and walkways, and you see some specific detail stuff. I'm gonna put something there about fences. But Sean was talking about that, fences, and I probably should define fences, but we can put that under specific additional standard safeguards. When considering fences, the reviewing agency shall try to ensure that there's a, wildlife corridor and or buffer, right? Give them some additional guidance for fences. 129-10 is very important. So in your dimension, in your use table, if you will, your regulation table, there's a category that says prohibited activity. So does that mean you can't do it? You can't ever build within 100 feet of a wetland? What happens if my whole lot's within 100 feet of a wetland, right? So you have to have, as I said before, a safety valve. You gotta allow for something. And in the zoning context for a variance, I didn't use the term variance here because we're not in zoning, it's not the zoning chapter. And plus, the town board is the regulatory body right here. And town boards, historically, by law, they can't be the board that reviews variances from the zoning code. So I didn't use the term variance. But 129-10, it's in the middle of page 14, is all in red, is additional standards. 129-8 was the normal standard for a permit. 129-10 is additional standards for something that is nominally prohibited in the regulated area. So I'll leave you to read it, but what I did, I actually took most of the standards, I went to the DC freshwater wetland regulations, and I borrowed liberally from what they do there. For example, I say, in general, the need for the proposed activity must clearly outweigh the benefits that are otherwise provided to the town and its citizens by the wetland or its regulated activities. And I also state that the burden, I stated above this, the burden of showing that the proposed activity will comply with these standards and safeguards rests entirely with the applicant. So I drew stuff from the DC. Without that, you had something at the bottom at the end, which was 129-10. I struck it out called waiver, which was very, very weak in my judgment, and was just not. If you are going to ask for something that is on the face of your code prohibited in the regulated area, well, you got to make the test fairly difficult. So the waiver thing is thrown out, and I put in the new standards. These are standards, and it doesn't prohibit everything. You have to allow. There are going to be circumstances, like I said, the only thing on the property, the whole property is within 100 feet of the wetland. You can't deprive somebody from any ability to build or construct or do something. You got to give them some outlet. And so that's allowed, but that's a harder standard to meet. So that's what 129-10 is all about. And that's the end of the changes. There are a couple of comments I made at the end that were responding to things that Sean had brought up. I don't know if I've covered those, Sean.
yeah, I think you did. I appreciate
129-10 is.
I appreciate you being attentive to that, and I think this is a significant step forward for the town.
I second that.
Sure.
Rick, you didn't get my concern.
Basements?
What's your concern?
Non-conforming property, non-conforming lot. Quarter acre,
Yep.
a third of an acre. Building upward or downward, how do we feel about that?
It doesn't matter so much depending on
And depending on the location, because we know areas that we are experiencing saltwater intrusion in areas, are the limits that we put on what can be built in those areas, or in general. The sea level is going to continue to rise.
So we're not distinguishing based on lot size. the standards are based on proximity to the wetlands. If you have a very small lot near the wetlands, you're gonna be subject to these regulations and.
I think, for example, the question is, so now we're allowing you to go up within your existing footprint, right? That,
You mean under the current code?
yeah, well, in this, you'll generally, in most cases, we're going to allow people to go up within their existing footprint.
Right, but we don't need a permit.
Right, yes. That's not saying, when I'm talking about no permit or not, I'm just saying what likely is permissible. People are going to say, if you're staying within your enclosed space, going up. What he's saying, I think, is, for example, you have a very small lot. If you're doubling the number of bathrooms and the occupancy and doubling the amount of water usage from that, and they're in a precarious area on a small lot, should you be making some determination that is it environmentally reasonable? Is that a fair, kind of example?
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that would get covered in a secra or anything, but where would you say, yeah, I know you want to do it, but you doing that, you're going to affect everybody around you. And I hadn't really given that a lot of thought of.
But the answer's in here. The standards for permit issues. You have to meet the standards. You need a permit.
It's not about permit, it's about if they come through the permit process, where could you potentially say, no, you can't do that because of that specific reason?
If the health department's already said yes.
Right.
Well, if you've.
House size
It's going to depend on the circumstances, but you might have a situation, I'm not saying it's going to be very common if you're going up and they're building partial second story, but, if there's something unique about the property, they're right next to the wetland, they're very close, there are standards. The standards apply for permit. It would be easier, frankly, in East Hampton Town's model, where you call that thing a variance, because you're within 100 feet, and the variance standards are a little stricter, but in the absence of that, we still have a bunch of permits. If it's now, if you're saying, Sean, if you're going up, it doesn't start by being a prohibited activity, right? It's a permit.
Right, exactly.
But even if it's a permit required activity, it doesn't mean you automatically get the permit. You do have to show that you comply with the standards, and you may be asked to do mitigation. For example, maybe you have to.
Yeah, I mean, look, so for example, and yeah, it's going to be a case, so I'm just looking at, in general, the need for the proposed activity must clearly outweigh the lost benefits or otherwise provided to the town and its citizens by the wetland and its regulated area. You have an out there, potentially, if somebody wants to make an argument and the surrounding neighbors come and they say, this is unreasonable based on what we're experiencing in water, I think there are clauses here you could have an out to at least have that conversation.
I mean, the requirement to get a permit implies the possibility that the permit could be denied.
Agreed, but you need somewhere to tag your, to throw your hook in.
I think the standards are for it. The standards are harder. Their standards in 129-8, those are for things that require a permit, because they are allowed with a permit. But then 129-10, things that are prohibited activities under the table, those have an even higher bar.
So to me, that jumps out as that's probably the clause you would try, but yes.
In other words, they need a permit, they have to show that they comply with permit standards.
All right.
And you are saying here that basically the citizens surrounding them, right,
But a large
can't be
house,
negatively affected.
sorry, a large.
You were arguing just 10 minutes ago that you were pushing for severe language to be in the code.
No, I get it. I just don't know how you would address that very specifically. You could, I mean, because you have the cause there, you have it there. I mean, look, you're preaching to the choir. So, I mean, believe me, do I think you could add another one that says it is an environmentally unfeasible, and, could impact the availability of whatever. I would be like, sure, throw that in there. You're preaching to the choir, but, I think you have the outlet there. The question for with this crowd is whether then, and you can certainly make it at the town board to add it, of whether they believe there's a need for something even more specific.
I think it becomes as much a zoning issue as a wetlands issue. If you're talking about house size on small lots, pyramid laws and they're,
You worked on that, or you started working on, town board started working on
I
it.
mean, that's one, but
That's right.
Albert,
I think it has to be like a joint effort of both zoning and wetlands and whatever other, health department regulations. I'm not sure you can limit it solely based on the wetlands issue. Maybe you can, but I think it's difficult.
Well, there's a stronger wetlands law than what's on the books right now.
Yeah.
So
this one, yeah.
we're already moving in that direction.
Okay. Can we close this subject now? I really gotta go.
We can-
You taking cold medicine before you get in the car?
No, I can't take that stuff.
Feel better.
Drowsy.
Hope you feel better.
All right.
Thank you.
Do we need a motion to move on to the?
No, not a motion necessarily, but we're gonna go on to select from that educational farm, and so David Kriegel and Greg Cranford are gonna
I will
recuse
be saying
themselves.
good night.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your,
Next meeting you.
thanks for the work on the wetlands. Mhm.
I'll talk.
Thanks for translating for me.
See everybody later. See you in April.
We gotta do Sylvester Manor.
That's not educational farm, that's what.
They're leaving.
No, they're recusing themselves on this application.
Oh, I did not know that.
But David's also not feeling well, this way he can just go. Okay. So we received a number of updates on this one, and everyone got those we had reached out to Julia Brennan just to get a better depiction of some of these events, because I don't know if it was, I know it wasn't just me, I know Sean, for example, mentioned that it's just really hard to envision where these activities are taking place, and I guess I was hoping for a better map that's showing everything, but for now, what we have is that it's sort of like for illustration purposes only. Did you guys get that map that shows like all potential spots of where these, the public space could be used, that might be for parking or the actual event itself? Just pull this out. Oh, the other thing I want to say that I was talking with Sarah earlier, and we thought that since she's the newest member of the board and we usually work on a draft memo for the town board, that I would work with her on this, so this way she could see how it's done, and we could kind of put that together. I do want to just make everyone aware that I think it's on the town board agenda for Tuesday morning, right? So I'd love to get it to them by this weekend, so that it's on, it's on the,
Sharon, so you're gonna do it?
yeah. Be easy, she's a planner, she knows it. Memos are second nature to her, so. Right, and Meg, it's on Tuesday.
Public hearing on Monday night.
Monday. Okay, so let's just make sure that we get it like over the weekend at least, or Friday. Well, I know you're busy too, so let's see how we do on that.
Yeah.
But anyway, just check your mailboxes for like sometime before Friday to check the memo.
I can make a few comments on this when you're.
Yes, so let me just see. Did you also look at the environmental consultants report that was?
Yeah, and so
Okay.
I guess I
That's what I
have
was
two
looking
things.
at.
One,
Yeah.
on the environmental consultants report, a lot of the answers were kind of TBD, so to speak. There seemed to be a number of that. And so we don't have the benefit of now what the environmental consultants' responses are to that. And I am presuming that between the environmental consultant and the building department, those specific items will be held in check, separate and apart from what we do.
Yeah.
On the request we made, I'll just reiterate for the record, and I don't know if it was 1 month, it's probably 2 months ago now. We had said very specifically that we did not believe that the Sylvester Manor Farm application was complete because we did not have any map that was very specific about where these outdoor events were taking place.
Correct, yeah.
And I remember very clearly the back and forth of, the kids do this and they walk through here and they do whatever. And I know I clarified and said, we're not looking for kind of those types of like kid camp activities. We're looking for where is the dinner dance held? Where is the concerts held? Where are the plays held? Delineate them on a survey map, label them as this is where these events are held, so that it's incredibly clear and part of the public record. I also further said that I thought in public interest would be served to delineate where are any of the cemeteries or grave sites and put them on the map, and any archaeological digs that are going to remain open, that are not like, look, they open and close or what have you. We chased them. What was given to us is garbage as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you might as well just circle the whole farm. It is really not delineating where specific events are held, and it just has a lot of squares or shapes that say basically we use all of our land.
So that all of this could potentially.
Yeah, and so we'll refer it to the town board. I still think it's wholly incomplete. I'm concerned about the unresponsiveness, and I scratch my head. I try to call it like I see it. I'm a supporter of Sylvester Manor and culturally what they do, but it seems like purposely evasive to not be very specific about where you're holding things, so that maybe they want to retain some flexibility, so they don't want to. That's the only reason I can say, and I don't want to jump to conclusions, but I don't know why they haven't been responsive, because it was a friendly conversation and they were like, yes, yes, yes. And I went there and had the same conversation and it was yes, 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 but then we get this. So I'm a little confused as to why that. And all I can think is that
I don't want to jump the gun and assume that they're just being purposely evasive. I take it as this is a developing thing, and they actually don't, I think they really don't know exactly where some of these things are going to be taking place.
But then they shouldn't
Yeah.
But then that's a question of, if you're asking for a site plan, the site plan is supposed to be, how are we using the property? And we're telling the public how we're using the property. And if they can't tell us, then maybe they should wait,
Do we have somebody,
think that's something-
online with them?
I don't think so. They're not here today, I don't think.
Tracy McCarthy.
Yeah, Tracy's on, well, Tracy's here for Julia because she couldn't make it tonight. Yeah, who's that?
Hey, guys.
Stephen, okay.
Hi, Stephen Searle. I'm executive director. How are you?
Good.
Good. Yeah, I think I can answer some of these questions. I mean, obviously we're not trying to be evasive. We're trying to be as helpful as we can here. I would also just say that we have lots of events that go all around the core, and they often do move, just like archaeological digs go on kind of all around that core of Sylvester Manor and around what we call the historic core right around the Manor House. So we've held Shakespeare, for example, in numerous different places. We've had the farm to table dinner primarily just down at the creek side. We've had concerts in numerous different locations over the years. So that's probably why you see different areas outlined, because we haven't necessarily had them consistently in just one place. We've had some stuff in the gardens. We've had some stuff right around the house. We've had some stuff right down by the creek. So, we can be more specific and draw in some, say this is where we've had these areas. I think we didn't want to get too complex or unclear.
Yeah, so I fair enough. I think, and maybe I haven't attended enough of your events, but like the, music down by the creek is, for as all as I know, is almost always down by the creek, right? And so I'm not sure why that wouldn't say, music by the creek, this is where we typically hold that event, and it's very specific. I don't, where the camp rotates around in the middle or whatever. From my point of view, it is really just trying to be transparent in the public interest of, the concern is always the events that are loud public things where there's lots of people, right? It's not the camps. And so putting out in the public forum with your request of, these are the areas that we may use or have historically used, and I actually don't know whether that then would limit you, because if you want a new place, I don't use that, you haven't delineated. I'm not sure how that evolves with permits or what have you, but I think being very specific and transparent as part of the public record, I thought was very, very important. And I almost can't glean anything from what was sent. And so I think just picking those major events, the plays, the concerts, the dinner dance, I think that's most of them. Where are they held? That there's PA systems and there's a fair amount of people, and the types of things that maybe have or might draw complaints, so that it's very clear, how you're using your property.
Okay. All right, we can delineate some of those bigger events. Again, I would just reiterate that we have had bigger events on lots of different parts of that property, from the farm, the windmill, to around the manor house, right, over the years, over the last 10 years that I've been there. All very effective, all with different kinds of events and different kinds of programs, and some of them kind of large. So that is really, again, just to reiterate, I don't want to, that is why we showed areas where these events have been before, mostly concentrated around the manor house. They're not always they're not always right on the water, creekside. They have been more interior. But we can delineate, a few areas, we can tell you again, kind of where exactly we've held these concerts over the last several years, and where we likely will in the future.
Stephen, I know in the past, at least one neighbor that I think lived across the creek, I think I have this right. She had at one point had invited some town board members to even stand on her porch and, listen to the amplified sound. I think when you do come before the town board, I think you're going to have to explain, because that's actually that was under our evaluation of the property, was to look at noise. And it's kind of hard to know, again, as Sean indicated, we don't, if the Creekside concert may not always be Creekside, I just think it's important to explain how you are going to control the amplification of noise, or what are you going to be using, and to what extent, and where, and how,
Yeah, I mean, I think so.
It's really,
as far as I know, that I don't know if that one complaint historically still exists. I'm not sure if the woman is still around or not.
She passed away.
And so I think the rest of the neighbors have been pretty comfortable, as far as I know. But I think it behooves you to say, so here's the creek, the concert, and the stage is facing this way, inward, facing away, which eliminates the noise. Be specific, show the, things that you're doing and how it's orchestrated to eliminate the noise as best you can. And I think it's not I don't think that's real complicated. It's some arrows, and, couple of notes, and really just the events, as you say, that are PA system, bigger events, those types of things.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's fine. Fair enough. I've actually, every single event that we have, just so that right, we will meet with the town board, we'll meet with the liaisons, we'll meet with Chief Reed, and kind of figure out a plan for, just let them know that this is happening. We actually would get a public assembly permit for this, and a noise exemption if necessary. Again, depending on the process, on the event. So, there's already, I do just want to assure you that there's already some checks and balances there. There's also us being proactive and going to the town and making sure that is mitigated. Sound, we totally understand that. And it's been a concern. I was on Mrs. Oakley's front deck when this arose, and I remember working with her. And she was very nice. I spent a whole bunch of time at her house, right? So obviously we take this very seriously, and we'll come up with a design of, okay, if there's an event, in this section, Creekside especially, the stage always faces away. It's all portable things that, of course, we bring in. We're done by dark, right? We have to be. We're not. We don't have permanent infrastructure, so we will make that clearer in our site plan. Can I ask a question just from your standpoint? I think one thing that we were concerned about, I'm concerned about personally. We've been now before various committees of the town for the last 2+ years, working towards this project. Will you? I would ask. Let me put it this way. I would ask that we not get a surveyor involved if possible, because redoing an entire survey, we have a huge property. It costs thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars. So I would just, if we can find a way to come up with something that meets your needs and where we don't spend just gobs of money, that would be very much appreciated.
I certainly don't see the need for you to spend any money on a surveyor. Yeah. Honestly, what I assumed you would do is take one of your existing survey mats and draw it in yourself by hand with, some notes.
That's helpful.
Just be a little clearer than this and a little bit more detail. And just to be clear, I'm a supporter of, generally of what you guys do. We wouldn't be doing our job, right? Like, this is what the questions we're supposed to ask. And so we kind of are left with a void, and we're a little bit kind of like, well, how do we pass on a recommendation when we don't really know the next level of detail about what they're doing?
Yeah, understood.
That's kind of what we're saying, to get this ready for the town board, do it now, do it in advance of, and if the town board's going to have you go for a survey, that will be up to them, but I would say no. Probably.
Understood. Okay, that's where we'll proceed. That's how we'll start, at least. Tracy, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to be clear on what you all are expecting from us, because I think what we had done on this, what we had submitted, is to sort of cover all of our events. That's what this was showing. But it sounds like you are just more concerned with any event that has amplification.
Yeah, good question. Right.
Well, we just like to know all. Well, I guess it was.
I would say use your good judgment. That's kind of what I'm focused on, and you can go back. But we had this conversation 2 months ago, where which was like, well, what about the kids' events or whatever? And I said, like, just focus on the things that are, reasonably could draw complaints. And so amplification is certainly the biggest, one, which I think probably should capture 90% of the things that would need to be there. If there's something that you think, well, maybe we should just put that. But we're clearly not looking for you to just draw circles around the entire property and say we use, everything. We're kind of like amplification is the biggest one, into the evening, events, less during the day, those types of things.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, can you partition that in your brain? Like, I get, where we reasonably.
Yeah, no, I understand.
Okay.
We, like Stephen said, historically, we have had events in many places, in the past, probably 8 years, a lot of things have sort of remained where they are now. But in the past it has. So I just want to make sure that we're not, just because we haven't done it maybe in the past 8 years doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to do it, sort of in the next 8 years. If we say, we always have a concert here, but maybe, in 8 years we want to have a concert over there, is this going to preclude us from doing that? I guess that's my concern.
Sean, can I just add that at this point, though, I just want to be clear that we're not asking you to now come back and bring us more documents here to the planning board. That would really hold up this process, because we asked for it before and we didn't get it. That's fine, but I'm just saying now, when you go to the town board, these are just things you might want that we're going to definitely put in.
We're going to recommend to the town board that this should be part of your package.
Okay.
Understood.
I would think that they would be supportive of, yes, this makes sense. You can, navigate that as you see fit, but we're going to kind of push you on to the next part of, the process. And I would say, like, again, you do go for special permits and things like that. So I assume if they're was a significant change of where you're using the property, you would handle that through the town. But I would say what you're doing now and what your current plans are, rather than, going back 10 years, kind of thing, would make the most sense.
Okay.
I just also want to add one more comment that was from my notes to both of you. With the possibility of these grass designated parking spots that could change potentially on what kind of event or the size of event, I just could imagine a case where you have like one particular area that tends to be used more. You could put up like partitions or make like safety pathways. I'm picturing people getting out of their cars, running, kids, all this parking changing all the time. And I think it could be confusing when people are like kids and pedestrians, adults, whatever, going in between these parking spaces on foot, going to the concert, and people are parking. That's just a recipe for an accident. So that's something to think about. And that wasn't really clear to me. And the fact that you say it could change to so many different places, that you don't have a permanent way to make things safe because they're changing all the time. So that was my only other comment from my notes.
So we're trying to understand the basis of how you're operating, but asking you to try to at least take a snapshot of where you are now and where you expect to be and make that part of the public record. And then, I think as you go through special permits and stuff, that may change, but it's reasonable as part of this process to say this is where we are now. And
Yes, understood. You did get a design on the parking areas that are generally used, correct?
Yes, we do, but I guess I got the impression that it could change, and like when I met with Julia on site, I was shown the typical area for overflow parking, but then she said, but extra cars can go over here and over here and over here. So it wasn't clear to me to envision people getting out of their vehicle, running to an event, controlling traffic coming. It just seemed a little chaotic to me, but again, I'm just thinking for safety.
Understood. Yeah. And again, just on the public record, I don't want to interject too much here, but we do hire parkers, professional parkers and security.
Julia explained that. Yeah.
When we have larger events. So,
yeah,
we take that very seriously. And as I said earlier, we work closely with the town on this, with the police department. We coordinate all of these activities, especially when there's a larger event. Over 100 plus people, 150 plus people, always. Anyway, but thank you for your comments, and this is very helpful for me. And just so that I understand the process, you will be basically developing a set of recommendations.
Correct. And we're going to have that ready by this weekend, and we're going to be sending it over to the town board. It'll be on the record, and then I think you have a public hearing on Monday. So it will be ready prior to that public meeting.
Great.
Anybody else? Or good, Sarah, Marcus?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow board members. So
Okay, good.
We're good.
All right. Thanks, Stephen, Tracy.
thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Anyone on Zoom that wanted to contribute a comment, or I see comments? Okay, in that case, I think we are done.
Wait, I think he just tried to.
Okay, no problem, yeah. Who, Mike? Mike? Are you trying to speak?
Yes.
No, okay.
With me. How about now? Can you hear me now?
We can hear you, yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you very much. I wanted to correct a couple of comments that went inside of there that I heard through the conversation. One of the things was that they had, that Sylvester Manor had coordinated and received permits for all of these events. That's not a truthful statement. In 2024, they held a concert illegally. They did not get approval from the town. There was over 300 attendants at the Creekside concert. It was called the Zydeco concert. They sold tickets. on Eventbrite for that. I called the police, so you can check with Chief Reed about that. They came, they took sound measurements. So that was not a truthful statement on the part of the applicant. And I'm an adjoining neighbor. I have 2 lots adjoining this, as well as my other neighbors in the area have all been very concerned about the noise inside of there. So those were not truthful statements. One of the things that concerns me about this hearing is no one has discussed the scale of these events, the potential of the scale of these events whatsoever. Historically, they've been in the hundreds of people have shown up at these events. Specifically, the Farm to Table event last year had over 450 people showed up. And I would think that would be something that the planning board would want to talk about in terms of when you start evaluating parking. These concert events, I pointed this out to the town board today. There's a real problem with these concert venues. Specifically, you could look at the one that's taking place. I noticed throughout the proceedings today, you were reflecting upon the other towns and how they deal with these matters. In Southampton, they're dealing with the Palm Tree Music Festival that started off with a couple of hundred participants, and it's now grown into over 10,000 people are showing up at these concert events. As of right now, the Zoning Board of Appeals approved these folks to have 2 concert events every year, right? So that's written into our legislation by the Zoning Board. That's approved. That happened in September and October of this year. Phil Diorio and Lynn Colligan and the rest of them on the Zoning Board. And so now they're approved to have 2 of these events a year with no controls, no guardrails whatsoever. There's no stipulation inside of that zoning ordinance. It simply says you can have 2 concert events. At present, that event last year in 2025 on the Shinnecock Reservation had over 10,000 attendees. The town of Southampton anticipates that there will be over 20,000 attendees this year. There is nothing precluding Sylvester Manor Educational Farm from having a 20,000 person plus event inside of there. One of the points that I made, and I'm finishing up here quickly, I just want you to have this information before you produce your commentary to the town board. There is this event that is happening in Southampton right now. They're calling it the Coachella of the East Coast. The Coachella event outside of Palm Springs takes place on 74 acres, and 250,000 people show up at that event over a 2-day period. 250,000 people. They have 240 acres over at Sylvester Manor Educational Farm. So start doing the math on the number of people that could show up at that event, given what you know about the infrastructure of this community. So there's been nothing addressed inside of these proceedings whatsoever. The last point I would want to make is none of this is included inside of the application. It's with the planning board. It's a 196-page long application, and I've reviewed it completely. The word concert, or certainly the word plural of that word concerts, does not exist inside of that application anywhere. So the public has no notice of this. So supposedly, ostensibly, a town board meeting is going to be made on your recommendation on Monday, where they're going to vote on this thing. But nobody in the community is understanding that this thing is going to be potentially legalized to be a concert venue, something specifically that the site plan review process is meant to look at, noise and amplified sound inside of this thing. And the last most important thing I would want to point out inside of this thing, and Stephen Cyril mentioned this, I think I lost count, at least 6 times inside of his comments inside of this thing. This has been going on for 16 years. The biggest omission inside of their application is this is a conversion of a single family residence to an event venue. That's it. That's all this is about. The last known legal use of that property was Alice Fisk's private property. It was a house. It was the biggest house on the island, but it was a house. It was a single family residence. And it's been legally converted into an event venue. And everybody in the town board, the zoning board, the planning board, everybody has known this has been taking place for over 16 years. And that is completely being glazed over inside of this process. It's not mentioned anywhere inside of this documentation that they are changing the use from a single family residence to a 240-acre event venue. And when you look at the underlying documentation, what was approved by the zoning board versus what you're looking at, none of these properties, the additional properties, the site plan that you were referring to earlier, where they were saying this is where they have the events, none of that was reviewed by the zoning board. This is a collection of over 6 lots that they own that make up the Sylvester Manor properties. Only one of those lots, the core lot where the manor house itself is shown, that's the only part that went through the Zoning Board of Appeals. There are roughly 5 lots over there that are shown on your map. You can look at on your map where they're showing they're planning on having planning on having events. None of those have been approved by the Zoning Board of Appeal to be part of the special application process. So this thing is a hot mess, and it's been handled poorly by the town board, the zoning board, and now the planning board. This thing needs to start over from scratch. Those are my public comments on this for right now for the planning board, prior to you making your recommendation to the town board on Monday. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. I had, who's that? Is that Mike?
I'm here.
No, I was just going to say that we didn't quite articulate it the way you did, but if you listen to our comments, we addressed those 2 things. The fact that the application is not really clear as to where a lot of these events are taking place. We expected a little bit clearer site plan documents, and we didn't get those. And we addressed music. That was one of the comments I made, and I think Sean did too. So that will go into our memo. So we did.
And we will, also comment on the idea of making sure that they have regimented parking plans and that there is transparency about the size and limitation of size of events. And so I don't think you're falling on deaf ears here. We are advisory, so we have to pass it on to the town board, and then they will have to make their decisions accordingly. But all of those comments will be included in our memo to them.
Thank you so much. I sincerely appreciate it. And as long as it's noted that they've had multiple illegal events without permits in the past, anybody else who are making an application to the planning board where they violated the town code, especially if it were a wetlands issue, you folks would annotate that inside of your thinking. That is absolutely on record. Meg is very well aware of that they violated the town code. They had a multi-100-person concert. They didn't get approval for that. They filmed an illegal film back there with Beyonce. They didn't get cited for that. They knew what they were doing. They have a pattern. They have a history of breaking the town laws, and that I think should be documented inside of your commentary. If somebody had a pattern of history of a developer or somebody was breaking the town laws with reference to the wetland codes, I'm certain that would make it inside of your recommendation that this party has this pattern of history. So thank you so much, folks. I sincerely appreciate all your hard work. Take care.
Pam.
Yeah, hi, good evening. I just want to ask the planning board, what were the parameters that you were charged with to investigate for this site plan review? Traffic, lighting, landscaping? If you could just tell me what you were assigned to look into for this project, I'd appreciate it.
It's typically traffic, noise, screening, archaeology, and usually like natural resources.
Okay, so on natural resources, if we look at our town code on environmental review for projects, in the town code, it says that this is actually a type 1 action because of the number of parking spaces that they need. I don't know who's looking into that. I don't know if that's your
No, that's not
or if that's going to go to the town board. I mean, I'll like to ask the town board. Okay, then I'll ask the town board about it on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thanks a bunch.
Sure. Thanks, Pam. Anyone else? Okay. I think that's a wrap on Sylvester Manor. Sarah and I will work on this draft. Just keep an eye on your inboxes like around the weekend so we can get it over to them. Sound good? Okay. So I'll make a motion that we close the meeting at 9:33. Second?
Second.
Both second. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.